She married a lie. Then she chose the monster. On the night Elara Vance walked away from her husband's betrayal, she thought she was choosing freedom. Instead, she stepped into a world where power is currency and blood runs thicker than law. Her father-in-law didn't offer her escape. He offered her an empire built on secrets darker than anything she'd imagined. And when she said yes, there was no going back. Stay until the end to see how far one woman will go when she stops running and starts claiming what's hers. Drop a like and comment your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The chandeliers dripped light like molten gold, each crystal catching and fracturing the glow until the ballroom of the Celestia Grand felt less like a room and more like the inside of a diamond. Elara Vance stood at the edge of it all, champagne flute warm in her hand, watching her husband charm a circle of executives with that smile, the one that had convinced her 5 years ago that she mattered. She didn't matter. Not here. Not to him. Julian Vance stood in the center of the crowd like he owned the oxygen in the room. Tall, sharp-featured, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His laugh carried over the string quartet, easy and practiced. The woman beside him, auburn hair swept up in an elaborate twist, emerald dress cut low enough to make a statement, laughed at something he said, her hand resting on his forearm just a second too long. Elara's stomach turned. She'd seen that touch before. Different woman, same choreography. Mrs. Vance! A server appeared at her elbow, tray extended. Another glass? She looked down. Her champagne was untouched, gone flat. No, thank you. The server nodded and melted back into the crowd. That was the thing about events like this. Everyone moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing on cue, filling space without occupying it. Elara understood the feeling. Across the room, Julian leaned in close to the woman in green, his mouth near her ear. Whatever he said made her eyes widen, then crinkle with laughter. His hand settled on the small of her back, proprietary and casual all at once. Elara set her glass down on the nearest table. Her hands were shaking. She'd known for months, maybe longer. There were signs, late nights that stretched into mornings, business trips that always seemed to require an extra day. The way he'd stopped looking at her when he talked, like she was furniture he'd grown tired of rearranging. But knowing and seeing were different animals. Knowing let you pretend. Seeing made you complicit in your own humiliation. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out, grateful for the distraction. Mom, how's the gala? You look beautiful in the photos. Elara's jaw tightened. Her mother had seen the pictures Julian's PR team posted, the ones from the red carpet where they stood side by side, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling like they meant it. The performance had been flawless. It always was. She typed back, "It's fine. Talk tomorrow." She couldn't do this. Not tonight. Not one more second of standing in this glittering cage, pretending she didn't see what everyone else probably already knew. Elara turned and walked toward the exit. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just one foot in front of the other, the click of her heels muffled by the thick carpet, then sharper on the marble of the lobby. The doorman nodded as she passed, holding the glass door open. "Cab, Mrs. Vance?" "No." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'll walk." "It's 23 degrees out, ma'am." "I know." The cold hit her like a physical thing, sharp and clean and real. She sucked in a breath and it burned all the way down. Her coat, a long black wool number Julian had bought her last Christmas, did almost nothing against the wind tunneling between the buildings. She didn't care. The cold made sense. The cold was honest. She walked. Past the valets and their idling town cars, past the couples stumbling out of the theater across the street, past the hot dog vendor packing up his cart for the night. Her feet ached in the heels, but she kept going, block after block, until the lights of the gala district faded behind her and the streets grew quieter. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Then again. And again. Finally, she stopped under a streetlight and pulled it out. 7 texts, all from Julian. "Julian, where did you go?" "Julian, Elara, people are asking about you." "Julian, this is embarrassing. Come back." "Julian, are you seriously doing this right now?" "Julian, fine, whatever, I'll handle it." "Julian, you're being childish." "Julian, don't bother coming home tonight if you're going to act like this." She stared at the last message until the screen blurred. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She could apologize, smooth it over, go back and stand beside him and smile until her face ached and pretend tomorrow that tonight never happened. She'd done it before. Instead, she typed 2 words. I'm done. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The typing indicator appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. She didn't wait to see what he'd say. She turned off her phone and shoved it back in her clutch. Her breath came out in white clouds. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. She started walking again, no destination in mind, just movement, just the need to be anywhere but where she'd been. She ended up in an all-night diner on 9th Avenue, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and a laminated menu that hadn't changed since 1987. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. A lone cook worked the grill behind the counter. 2 other customers, a kid in a delivery uniform and an old man nursing a cup of coffee, occupied opposite ends of the room. Elara slid into a booth by the window. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. Mascara smudged, lipstick gone, hair coming loose from its pins. She looked wrecked. She felt worse. Coffee? The waitress appeared, pot in hand, looking like she'd been doing this for 1,000 years and would do it for 1,000 more. Please. The waitress poured, then stood there for a moment, studying Elara with the kind of eyes that had seen every variation of human misery. Rough night. Elara managed a thin smile. You could say that? Food? Just the coffee. The waitress nodded and moved on. Elara wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into her palms. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber. She drank it anyway. Her phone was still off. She should turn it back on, check the messages, deal with the fallout, start managing the damage. That's what she always did. Managed, smoothed over, made it easier for everyone else. She left it off. The diner door chimed. She didn't look up. Footsteps approached her booth, slow and deliberate. She tensed, half expecting Julian to come storming in, ready to drag her back to the performance. But the voice that spoke wasn't Julian's. Mrs. Vance? She looked up. The man standing beside her table was older, maybe mid-60s, with silver hair combed back from a lined face and eyes the color of slate. He wore a charcoal overcoat and leather gloves, expensive but understated. There was something about him, a stillness, a weight, that made the air around him feel heavier. She knew him. She'd seen him exactly 3 times. At her wedding, at Julian's promotion party, and at a charity dinner last year where he'd stayed for exactly 1 drink before disappearing. Julian's father, Dominic Vance. Mr. Vance, she set her coffee down carefully. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same question. He gestured to the empty seat across from her. May I? She should say no. Should ask how he even found her. Should tell him to leave her alone. Instead, she nodded. Dominic slid into the booth with the kind of precision that suggested he never did anything by accident. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the way his mouth settled into something that wasn't quite a frown, but wasn't neutral either. He looked tired. Not old. Tired. Like he carried something heavy and had been carrying it for a very long time. How did you find me? Elara asked. You walked 26 blocks in heels and a cocktail dress. You weren't exactly subtle. He paused. And I've been keeping an eye on you. Her spine straightened. Excuse me? Not for the reasons you're imagining. He pulled off his gloves, folding them with deliberate care. Julian is my son. That doesn't make me blind to what he is. The waitress reappeared, eyeing Dominic with the same tired assessment she'd given Elara. Coffee? Please. Black. She poured and left. Elara studied him across the table. If you're here to convince me to go back, I'm not. That stopped her. Then why are you here? Dominic picked up his coffee, holding it but not drinking. Because you sent a text that ended a marriage, walked out of one of the city's most important social events, and disappeared into the night without a plan. That suggests either courage or desperation. Possibly both. He met her eyes. I wanted to know which. Does it matter? It does to me. Elara laughed, sharp and bitter. Why? We've barely spoken in 5 years. You show up to the obligatory events, shake hands, make small talk, and leave. You don't know me. No, Dominic agreed, but I know my son, and I know what it looks like when someone realizes they've made a mistake. He set the coffee down without having tasted it. Where will you go tonight? The question landed like a punch. She didn't have an answer. She had friends, acquaintances really, people from Julian's world who would smile and offer sympathy and gossip about her the second she left the room. Her mother lived in Vermont, remarried, settled into a life Elara had never quite fit into. She had a credit card in her own name, some savings, an apartment she technically co-owned but had always felt like Julian's. She had nothing. Dominic seemed to read the answer in her silence. Come with me. What? I have a place. You can stay as long as you need. No strings, no expectations, just a roof and some space to figure out what comes next. Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to thank him politely and walk away and find a hotel and deal with this like an adult. But those instincts were the same ones that had kept her standing in that ballroom, watching her husband touch another woman, smiling through the pain. Why would you help me? She asked. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something that looked almost like regret. Because you're the only person in Julian's life who ever tried to make him better. That deserves better than being thrown away. It wasn't an answer, not really, but it was something. Okay, she heard herself say, okay. They left the diner together. A black car waited at the curb. Town car, tinted windows. Driver in a dark suit who opened the rear door without a word. Elara hesitated for just a second before climbing in. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something clean and expensive she couldn't name. Dominic slid in beside her, and the driver pulled away from the curb smoothly, merging into the sparse late-night traffic. They didn't speak. Elara watched the city slide past, familiar streets growing less familiar as they headed north, the buildings changing from high-rises to brownstones, then to something else entirely. The car turned onto a tree-lined street she didn't recognize, then through a gate that opened as they approached. The house, if you could call it that, sat back from the road, hidden behind walls and trees. It was enormous, all stone and glass and architectural lines that suggested old money trying to look modern. Lights glowed in some of the windows. The rest were dark. This is yours? Elara asked as the car stopped in front of the entrance. One of them, of course. She'd known Julian came from wealth. His lifestyle made that obvious. But she'd never quite understood the scale. The Vance name appeared on buildings, on charity boards, in business sections of newspapers. She'd assumed it was inherited fortune, the kind that got managed by accountants and lawyers while the family coasted on interest. Looking at this house, she realized she'd assumed wrong. The driver opened her door. She climbed out, her heels crunching on gravel. Dominic came around the car, and together they walked to the entrance. The front door, heavy wood, ornate iron fixtures, swung open before they reached it. A woman stood in the doorway. Late 40s, dark hair pulled back in a bun, wearing slacks and a crisp white blouse despite the hour. She looked at Elara with the kind of neutral professionalism that revealed nothing. Mrs. Chen, Dominic said, this is Elara. She'll be staying with us. Please prepare the East Wing guest suite. Mrs. Chen nodded. Of course. Will she need anything else? Ask her. Mrs. Chen turned to Elara, and for the first time something almost kind flickered in her expression. Mrs. Vance, are you hungry? Would you like something to drink, a change of clothes? Elara's brain felt sluggish. I don't know. Maybe some water? I'll bring a tray up to your room. Clothes as well. I believe we have items that will fit. She glanced at Dominic. Anything else? Privacy, he said. Mrs. Chen disappeared into the house. Dominic gestured for Elara to follow. She did, stepping into a foyer that belonged in a museum. Marble floors, a curved staircase, artwork on the walls that she suspected wasn't prints. The space felt both grand and empty, like a stage waiting for actors who never arrived. This way. Dominic led her up the staircase, down a hall lined with closed doors, to a room at the far end. He opened the door and stepped back, letting her enter first. The suite was bigger than the apartment she'd lived in before marrying Julian. A sitting area with a fireplace, a bedroom beyond with a 4-poster bed, an attached bathroom she could see through an open door. Everything tasteful, expensive, impersonal. You'll be comfortable here, Dominic said. It wasn't a question. Elara turned to face him. Why are you really doing this? For a moment, she thought he might actually tell her. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words, deciding which ones were safe to let out. Instead, he said, "Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." "I need to know." "Morning, Elara." His voice wasn't harsh, just final. He stepped back into the hall, pulling the door closed behind him. She stood in the silence of the room, her heart beating too fast, her mind spinning. She'd left her husband. She'd gotten into a car with a man she barely knew. She was standing in a house that felt more like a fortress, wearing a dress she'd picked out to be admired by people who didn't matter, and she had no idea what happened next. Her hands were shaking again. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "Come in." Mrs. Chen entered carrying a tray. Water in a crystal glass, a selection of fruit and cheese, a sleeve of crackers. Behind her, a younger woman followed with an armful of clothes, which she laid carefully on the bed. "The bathroom is stocked with toiletries," Mrs. Chen said. "If you need anything else, there's a phone on the nightstand. Dial 0 and someone will answer." "Thank you." Mrs. Chen nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you're safe here. Mr. Vance doesn't bring many people into this house. If you're here, it's because he wants you to be." It should have been comforting. Instead, it raised a dozen new questions. The two women left. Elara locked the door behind them, then immediately felt foolish, like a lock would matter in a place like this, with people who clearly had access to everything. She kicked off her heels, and her feet screamed gratitude. The dress came off next, a complicated process involving a hidden zipper and 24 tiny hooks. She left it in a heap on the floor and pulled on the clothes from the bed, soft cotton pants, a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her wedding dress. They fit perfectly. She should eat. She should drink the water. She should lie down and sleep and let her body reset. Instead, she walked to the window. The room overlooked the grounds, manicured lawns stretching into darkness, trees forming a perimeter she couldn't see the end of. In the distance, lights moved. A patrol, maybe. Security. The kind of thing normal people didn't have. What kind of life required this much protection? Her phone was still off. She pulled it from her clutch and stared at it, thumb hovering over the power button. If she turned it on, there would be messages. From Julian, definitely. Maybe from his mother, or his assistant, or one of the society wives who would pretend to care while mining for gossip. There would be questions she didn't want to answer and accusations she couldn't defend against. She turned it on anyway. The screen lit up. Messages flooded in. 37 texts, 14 missed calls, 6 voicemails. She scrolled through them with a kind of detached fascination. Julian, escalating from annoyance to anger to something that looked like panic. His mother, icily polite, asking where she'd gone. 3 friends, acquaintances, with variations of, "Are you okay?" that felt more curious than concerned. And then, buried in the middle, one from a number she didn't recognize. Unknown. "You made the right choice. Don't look back." She stared at it. No context, no signature. Just those 7 words. Her skin prickled. She checked the timestamp, sent 20 minutes after she'd left the gala. Before she'd even reached the diner. Someone had been watching. She set the phone down carefully, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. The room suddenly felt too big and too small at the same time. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to rewind 12 hours and make different choices and wake up in a life that made sense. But she'd sent the text. She'd walked out. She'd gotten in the car. There was no going back. She climbed into the bed, not bothering to pull back the covers, and lay there staring at the ceiling. Sleep felt impossible. But exhaustion was its own kind of weight, and eventually it pulled her under. She dreamed of chandeliers breaking, glass raining down in slow motion, each piece catching the light before it shattered. Morning came with sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover. Elara woke disoriented, her brain scrambling to place where she was. Not her apartment, not a hotel. The room came into focus piece by piece, expensive furniture, high ceilings, the faint smell of lavender from somewhere. Right. The house. Dominic's house. She sat up, her body aching in places that had nothing to do with the bed. The events of last night assembled themselves in her memory like puzzle pieces that didn't quite want to fit together. Her phone sat on the nightstand where she'd left it. She picked it up, 43 texts now. She didn't read them. A soft knock at the door. "Mrs. Vance, are you awake?" Mrs. Chen's voice, polite and neutral. Yes, come in. The door opened. Mrs. Chen entered carrying another tray. Coffee this time, toast, eggs that smelled better than they had any right to. I thought you might be hungry. Mr. Vance would like to speak with you when you're ready. No rush. She set the tray on the small table by the window and turned to leave. Mrs. Chen? The woman paused. How long have you worked for Mr. Vance? Something flickered across her face. Not quite a smile, more like the memory of one. 17 years. That's a long time. It is. What's he like? Really? Mrs. Chen studied her for a moment, like she was deciding how much truth to offer. Finally, she said, He's fair, he's careful, and he protects what's his. She paused at the door. If you're here, Mrs. Vance, you're his now, whether you understand what that means yet or not. She left before Elara could respond. Elara ate the breakfast, mechanically, tasting nothing, and drank the coffee. She showered in the bathroom that was bigger than her first apartment, using products that smelled like things she couldn't name but probably cost more per ounce than she made in a day. She dressed in clothes from the selection that had been left for her, dark jeans, a soft gray sweater, everything fitting like it had been made for her body specifically. When she couldn't stall any longer, she left the room. The house in daylight was somehow more intimidating than it had been at night. Every surface gleamed. Every piece of art looked irreplaceable. The silence was the kind that suggested people had been trained not to make noise. She found her way back to the foyer and stood there, unsure where to go. He's in the study. Mrs. Chen appeared from a side hall. Down that corridor, third door on the left. Thank you. The corridor was lined with photographs, black and white mostly, showing the house at different stages of construction or renovation. She paused at one near the end, a much younger Dominic standing in front of the house's skeleton, hard hat on his head, mud on his boots, looking at the camera with an expression that wasn't quite a smile. The third door was already open. Dominic sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of dark wood, reading something on a tablet. He glanced up when she appeared in the doorway. Elara, come in. She stepped inside. The study was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on 2 walls, windows overlooking the grounds on a third. It smelled like old paper and furniture polish. Sit, Dominic said, gesturing to one of the chairs across from his desk. She sat, feeling like a student called to the principal's office. Dominic set the tablet aside and folded his hands on the desk. How did you sleep? Fine. It was a lie, but a polite one. Good. He paused, studying her with those slate-gray eyes. We need to talk about what happens next. I'm going to find a hotel, figure out my next steps. I shouldn't impose. You're not imposing. His voice was firm but not harsh, and I'm not suggesting you leave. What I'm suggesting is that you understand what you've walked into. Her stomach tightened. What do you mean? Dominic leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. For a long moment he didn't speak. When he did, his voice was careful, measured, like he was picking each word from a limited supply. The Vance family has been in this city for 4 generations. We've built things, businesses, properties, relationships. Some of that building was done in the light. Some of it required darker spaces. Elara's mouth went dry. I don't understand. Yes, you do. You're a smart woman. You wouldn't have survived Julian this long if you weren't. He stood, walking to the window, hands clasped behind his back. My grandfather came to this country with nothing. He built something from that nothing. My father expanded it. I've spent my life maintaining it, protecting it, making sure the family name means something. That required compromises. What kind of compromises? Dominic turned to face her. The kind that don't get discussed at charity dinners. The room felt colder. Elara's brain was working overtime trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the implications of what he was saying. Are you telling me? I'm telling you that the world you thought you married into is different than the one that actually exists. Julian was kept separate from most of it. He runs legitimate businesses, makes legitimate money. He's the face we show the world. Dominic's expression hardened. But the foundation he stands on? That's built on things he's never had the stomach to understand. Things like what? Control. Influence. The kind of power that doesn't show up on tax returns. He walked back to the desk but didn't sit. I'm not going to lie to you, Elara. What I run isn't legal in the traditional sense, but it's also not what you're probably imagining. No violence for the sake of it. No drugs, no human trafficking, none of the things that keep decent people up at night. What we do is manage. We facilitate. We make sure certain things happen and other things don't. Elara felt like the floor was tilting. You're careful with the words you choose, Dominic said quietly. Labels have power. Once something is named, it becomes fixed. Real. She stood, her legs unsteady. I need to leave. You can. The door isn't locked. Mrs. Chen will call you a car. You can go to a hotel, hire a lawyer, start divorce proceedings, rebuild your life. He paused. Or you can stay and let me protect you. Protect me from what? From Julian. From the fallout of leaving him. From the people who will circle you the second they realize you're vulnerable. Dominic's voice was steady, almost gentle. You walked out on my son in front of half of Manhattan's elite. That made you interesting, and interesting people become targets. That's insane. I'm nobody. You were married to Julian Vance for 5 years. You lived in his home, attended his events, met his contacts. You're a liability now. To him, to his reputation, potentially to things you don't even know you know. Dominic moved closer, not threatening, just present. Julian will try to control the narrative. He'll paint you as unstable, unfaithful, whatever sells. And if that doesn't work, he'll use other methods. He's not as soft as he pretends to be. Elara's hands were shaking again. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're up against. And because I'm offering you a choice. Face it alone, or accept help from someone who knows how these games are played. Help that comes with strings. Everything comes with strings, Dominic said. The question is whether you can live with them. She wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to get out, to find somewhere safe, somewhere normal, somewhere that didn't involve fathers-in-law who talked about control and influence like they were discussing the weather. But where would she run to? Her apartment was Julian's. Her friends were Julian's. Her life, for the past 5 years, had been built around being Mrs. Julian Vance. Strip that away, and what was left? What would staying mean, she heard herself ask. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Satisfaction, maybe, or relief. It means you live here, under my protection. You don't talk to Julian or anyone in his circle without clearing it with me first. You don't make public statements. Don't hire lawyers. Don't do anything that could create complications. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected, he corrected. There's a difference. And what do you get out of this? For the first time, Dominic smiled. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cruel either. Maybe I'm tired of watching my son destroy decent things. It wasn't a real answer, but then nothing about this conversation felt real. Elara closed her eyes, trying to think through the fog in her head. Stay or go, trust or run. Every option felt like stepping off a cliff. I need time, she said finally. You have until tonight. After that, Julian will escalate. And once that starts, I can't guarantee what I'll be able to contain. She opened her eyes. That's not much time. No, Dominic agreed, but it's all you have. He walked past her to the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. Mrs. Chen will show you the grounds if you'd like. Sometimes walking helps with thinking. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the study with choices that all felt wrong. She did walk. Mrs. Chen appeared within minutes of Dominic leaving, as if she'd been waiting just outside, and led her through the house to a side door that opened onto the gardens. The grounds were enormous. Formal gardens near the house gave way to wilder spaces further out, paths winding through trees, a small pond with a fountain, benches positioned in spots that offered views of nothing but green. It was beautiful in a way that felt intentional, designed, like someone had taken nature and perfected it. She walked until her legs ached, trying to organize her thoughts into something resembling logic. Dominic's offer, Julian's threats, the life she'd left and the one she might be stepping into. Her phone buzzed. She'd forgotten she had it with her. Julian. We need to talk. I'm coming to get you. Her blood went cold. She looked around, suddenly aware of how exposed she was. The walls were far away. The house was a distant shape through the trees. She typed back, How do you know where I am? The response came immediately. Find my friends. You never turned it off. Shit. She'd forgotten about that. The app they'd set up years ago. back when Julian had sold it as a safety thing, a way to find each other if something went wrong. She'd never thought about it after that first week. She opened the app and disabled sharing. Then, for good measure, she blocked Julian's number. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. Problem? She spun. A man stood a few feet away, early 30s, dark suit, build that suggested he spent significant time in a gym. She hadn't heard him approach. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Security. Mr. Vance asked me to keep an eye on you." He nodded toward the phone. "Everything okay?" "My husband, my ex-husband. He knows I'm here." The man's expression didn't change. "Not anymore, he doesn't. The house has signal blocking once you're past the perimeter. He tracked you to the general area, but not here specifically." He pulled out his own phone, typed something. "I've let Mr. Vance know. He'll handle it." "Handle it how?" "However he needs to." The man's voice was professionally neutral. "You should probably head back to the house. It's almost lunch." It wasn't a suggestion. Elara let him escort her back, her mind racing. Julian knew she was nearby. He was coming, and Dominic was going to handle it. She didn't know which part terrified her more. Lunch was served in a dining room that could have seated 20 but was set for one. Mrs. Chen brought soup, sandwiches, tea. Elara picked at it, not hungry, her stomach in knots. Dominic didn't appear. Afternoon bled into evening. Elara stayed in her room watching the grounds from the window, expecting at any moment to see Julian's car roaring up the drive. It never came. At 6, Mrs. Chen knocked. "Mr. Vance would like you to join him for dinner. The dining room, 7 o'clock. "Did something happen?" Mrs. Chen's face revealed nothing. "He'll explain." Elara changed into something from the wardrobe, a simple black dress that felt too nice for dinner at home, but probably wasn't in this house. She found her way to the dining room at 7 exactly. Dominic was already there, seated at the head of the table, reading something on his phone. He looked up when she entered. "Sit." She took the chair to his right. A moment later, staff appeared with the first course, some kind of salad that looked like art. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Finally, Elara couldn't take it anymore. "Did Julian come?" "He tried." Dominic set down his fork. "He made it as far as the gate. I had a conversation with him. He won't be back." "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where I explained that you're under my protection now, and any attempt to contact or harass you will have consequences." Dominic's voice was calm, almost pleasant. He understood. Just like that? Julian has always been better at understanding power than wielding it. He knows what I'm capable of. He won't push. Elara's appetite, already minimal, vanished completely. "What are you capable of?" Dominic smiled, and for the first time, it looked almost genuine. "More than I hope you ever have to find out." The rest of the meal passed in fragments of small talk, Dominic asking about her background, her family, how she'd met Julian. She answered mechanically, her brain still stuck on consequences and protection and power. When the plates were cleared and coffee arrived, Dominic leaned back in his chair. "Have you made a decision?" She'd been asking herself that question all day. The smart choice was obvious: leave, find a lawyer, start over, stay away from whatever darkness Dominic represented. But smart choices were for people who had options. And sitting in this house, with Julian somewhere out there plotting his next move, Elara realized she didn't have options. She had one choice: stay or be destroyed. "I'll stay," she said. "For now." "For now is enough." Dominic nodded like it was settled. "Tomorrow we'll discuss terms. For tonight, just rest. You're safe here." Safe. The word felt relative. She excused herself and returned to her room, exhausted despite having done nothing all day. She changed into the soft clothes Mrs. Chen had provided, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the house she heard footsteps. Voices, low and indistinct, the hum of machinery she couldn't identify. This wasn't safety. This was a different kind of cage. But at least it was one she'd chosen. Her phone, still on the nightstand, buzzed one last time. She picked it up. "Unknown. Welcome to the family." She stared at the message until the screen went dark, her heart pounding against her ribs. Then she turned the phone off and buried it in a drawer. Whatever happened next, there was no going back. The first week passed in a blur of routines she didn't understand and silence that felt deliberate. Elara woke each morning to find breakfast waiting outside her door, coffee that was always the right temperature, food she hadn't requested but somehow wanted. She ate alone, walked the grounds with security shadows she pretended not to notice, and spent her afternoons in the library Dominic had pointed out on her second day. The library was 3 stories of books that looked read, not decorative. She pulled volumes at random: history, philosophy, crime novels worn soft at the spines. Someone had spent time here. She wondered if it was Dominic, then decided it didn't matter. On the 8th day, Mrs. Chen appeared at her door after breakfast. "Mr. Vance would like to see you. His office, 10 o'clock. Elara glanced at the clock, 9:45. Now? He appreciates punctuality. The office was different from the study. Smaller, more functional, with walls covered in monitors showing different angles of the property. Dominic sat at a desk that looked military-issue compared to the ornate piece in the study, typing on a laptop that seemed too modern for his hands. He looked up when she entered. "Close the door." She did. The lock clicked automatically. "Sit." She sat in the single chair across from him, her spine straight, hands folded in her lap. Waiting. Dominic closed the laptop and studied her with that same measuring look he'd given her in the diner. "You've been here over a week. How do you feel?" "Like a guest who's overstayed." "Honesty. Good." He leaned back. "Julian filed for divorce yesterday. His lawyer sent the papers to your mother's address in Vermont." Her stomach dropped. "He what?" "He's claiming abandonment, infidelity, mental instability. The works." Dominic's voice was matter-of-fact. "He's also frozen your joint accounts and filed a restraining order claiming you've been harassing him." The room tilted. "That's insane. I haven't contacted him once." "I know, but he has a dozen witnesses who'll say otherwise. Texts from burner phones, calls from spoofed numbers, emails from accounts that trace back to IP addresses near here." Dominic pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across. "He's been busy." Elara opened the folder. Inside were printouts, text messages she'd never sent, emails she'd never written, call logs from numbers she'd never owned, all of them escalating from desperate to threatening, painting a picture of a woman unraveling. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "This is fabricated. All of it." "Of course it is. Julian learned from the best." There was something bitter in Dominic's tone. His mother, specifically. She's been running interference campaigns since before he was born. This is textbook for her. "Can we fight it?" "We can, but it'll be ugly, expensive, and public. Every detail of your marriage will get dissected in court. Every argument, every perceived slight, every moment you weren't the perfect wife." He paused. "Are you prepared for that?" She thought about it. The depositions, the testimonies, standing in front of strangers and explaining why she'd walked out, admitting she'd ignored the signs for years because it was easier than confronting the truth. "No," she said quietly, "I'm not." "Then we do this my way." "Which is?" Dominic stood, walking to the wall of monitors. He tapped one showing the front gate. "Julian wants a war. He thinks he can bury you in legal fees and public humiliation until you're too broken to fight back. What he doesn't understand is that I've been fighting wars since before he was born." He turned to face her. "I can make this go away. The divorce, the restraining order, the accounts, all of it. Julian will sign whatever we put in front of him and walk away quietly." "How?" "By reminding him who holds the real power in this family." Dominic's expression was flat, unreadable. "But that means you stay here, under my protection. No contact with your old life, no public appearances, nothing that gives his lawyers ammunition. You become invisible until this is over." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Elara looked down at the folder, at the lies printed in neat rows. Part of her wanted to fight, to stand up in court and tell the truth, and let the world see Julian for what he was. But another part, the part that had survived 5 years of being married to him, knew better. Julian didn't fight fair. And if Dominic was offering a way out that didn't involve her complete destruction, maybe she should take it. "What do you want in return?" she asked. "Your trust." "That's it?" "For now." He moved back to the desk, his movements precise and controlled. "Later, there may be other things. Small favors, nothing that would compromise you. But right now, all I need is your word that you'll stay and let me handle this. She should ask what kind of favors, should demand specifics, get everything in writing, protect herself. But the folder in her hands was evidence of how far Julian would go, and she was tired of fighting alone. Okay, she said. Okay. Dominic nodded once, like a contract had been signed. Good. I'll make some calls. By the end of the week, this will be resolved. Just like that? Just like that. She left the office feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. One problem solved, but at what cost? She didn't know, wasn't sure she wanted to. That afternoon, she found Dominic in the library. He sat in a leather chair near the window, reading a book with a worn cover. He looked up when she entered. Can I ask you something? She said. You can ask. I may not answer. She sat in the chair across from him. Why do you live alone in a house this big? He closed the book, marking his place with a finger. I don't live alone. Mrs. Chen is here. The staff. Security. That's not the same as family. No, he agreed. It's not. You had a wife. Julian mentioned her once, years ago. He said she died. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Not pain, exactly, but the memory of it. Margaret. She passed 11 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. So was I. He set the book aside. She was the only person who ever called me on my shit, told me when I was wrong, made me explain myself, wouldn't let me hide behind power or money or any of the other walls I'd built. He looked out the window. Julian has her eyes. Nothing else but the eyes. Do you miss her? Every day. He said it simply, like stating a fact. But missing someone doesn't bring them back. You learn to live with the empty spaces. Elara thought about her own empty spaces. The marriage that had hollowed her out, the friendships she'd let atrogate, the version of herself she'd buried to make room for Julian's needs. I don't know who I am anymore, she heard herself say. Without him, without the role I was playing, I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. Dominic turned to look at her, his gray eyes sharp. Then figure it out. You have time here. Use it. How? However you want. Read, walk, sleep for a week straight. Margaret used to paint when she needed to think. Terrible paintings, objectively awful, but they helped her process. He picked up his book again. The East Studio hasn't been used in years. It's yours if you want it. She didn't know how to paint, didn't know how to do much of anything that wasn't in service of being Mrs. Julian Vance. But maybe that was the point. Thank you, she said. He didn't respond, already back in his book. She left him there, alone with his ghosts. The studio was on the 3rd floor, a room with skylights and north-facing windows and dust covers over everything. Elara pulled them off to reveal easels, tables, shelves lined with supplies that looked untouched. Everything organized, waiting, like Margaret had just stepped out for a moment and would be back any second. She found canvases stacked against one wall, some blank, some with half-finished paintings. She pulled one out. A landscape, maybe, or an abstract. It was hard to tell. Dominic hadn't been lying about terrible. But there was something in it, an energy, a sense of someone working through something they couldn't put into words. Elara understood that feeling. She set up an easel, found paints that were probably dried out but might still work, and stood in front of a blank canvas with no idea what to do next. So she just started. A brushstroke, then another. No plan, no vision, just color on white. It looked like garbage. She kept going anyway. Hours passed. The light changed. Her back ached and her hands were covered in paint, and the canvas looked like a kindergartner's art project. But for the first time in weeks, her mind was quiet. A knock at the door broke her concentration. Mrs. Chen stood in the hallway. Dinner in 30 minutes. Elara looked at the mess she'd made. Paint on the floor, on her clothes, probably in her hair. I need to clean up. Yes, Mrs. Chen agreed, but there was something almost approving in her tone. You do. Dinner became a routine. Every night at 7, Elara would join Dominic in the dining room. They'd eat, talk about nothing important, books, weather, the state of the gardens. He never asked about her day, and she never asked about his. It was comfortable in a way that felt dangerous. 2 weeks after she'd arrived, a new face appeared at dinner. A man, maybe 40, with dark hair graying at the temples and a suit that screamed lawyer or accountant. He sat at Dominic's left, across from Elara, and didn't introduce himself. Dominic made the introduction. Elara, this is Marcus Chen, my attorney, Mrs. Chen's nephew. Marcus nodded. Mrs. Vance. Just Elara. Elara. He had a voice that was probably soothing in a courtroom. I've been handling your divorce proceedings. Her appetite vanished. Already? Mr. Vance moves quickly when necessary. Marcus pulled a folder from his briefcase. Julian signed the papers this morning. Uncontested, no alimony on either side, assets split according to prenuptial agreement. Clean break. He just agreed? After some persuasion, Dominic cut his steak with precise movements. He's also dropped the restraining order and unfrozen the accounts. You'll find your personal account has been credited with your share of the marital assets. Modest, but enough to start over. Elara stared at him. 3 weeks ago, she'd been married. Now she was divorced, sitting in a house that felt like a fortress, eating dinner with a man who'd made her problems disappear with a few phone calls. What did you do? She asked. What was necessary? Dominic didn't look up from his plate. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. If you have questions about the settlement, I don't want to know about the settlement. Elara set down her fork. I want to know what you did to my husband. Ex-husband, Dominic corrected. And I didn't do anything to him. I simply reminded him of certain obligations. Family matters he'd prefer stayed private. What kind of obligations? Finally, Dominic looked at her. His expression was harder than she'd seen it. The kind that involved money he's been moving through accounts I control. Money he thought I didn't know about. Money that, if certain people found out about it, would land him in federal prison for the next 20 years. The room went cold. You blackmailed him. I protected you. His voice didn't rise, but the weight behind it increased. Julian tried to destroy you. I stopped him. The method is irrelevant. The method is everything. Elara stood, her chair scraping against the floor. You didn't protect me. You bought me. There's a difference. Is there? Dominic's eyes were flat, unreadable. Because from where I'm sitting, you have your freedom, your money, and your reputation intact. What exactly are you complaining about? I'm complaining about being treated like property that gets transferred between men. Her voice was shaking. You and Julian, you're not that different. You both think you can control everything around you, manipulate people into doing what you want, and call it protection. Something flickered across Dominic's face. Anger, maybe, or hurt. Hard to tell. If that's what you think, you're welcome to leave. The door's never been locked. Maybe I will. Then do it. He stood, matching her energy. Walk out, find a hotel, hire your own lawyer, fight Julian without my help. See how far you get before his mother buries you in litigation, and his friends make sure you can't work anywhere in this city. He moved around the table toward her, not threatening, just present. You want to be independent? Fine. Be independent. But don't pretend you didn't need what I offered. Don't pretend you're too good for the help that saved you. They stood 3 feet apart, both breathing hard, the air between them electric with anger and something else she couldn't name. Marcus cleared his throat. I'll leave you two to discuss this. Neither of them looked at him as he gathered his things and left. The silence after he was gone felt heavy enough to crush. Elara's hands were clenched so tight, her nails bit into her palms. Dominic's jaw worked like he was chewing words too sharp to swallow. Finally, she said, I didn't ask to be saved. No, you asked to be protected. There's a difference. You're right. There is. Protection means you guard someone. Saving means you own them afterward. Is that what you think this is? Dominic's voice dropped, quiet and dangerous. You think I want to own you? I don't know what you want. You bring me here, give me everything, make my problems disappear, and you won't tell me why. You talk about protection and family and obligations, but it's all smoke. I don't know what's real. This is real, he gestured around the room. The food you eat, the bed you sleep in, the fact that Julian can't touch you anymore. That's all real. The rest, the why, the motivation. Does it matter? Yes, she said. It matters. He stared at her for a long moment, something warring behind his eyes. Then he turned away, walking to the window, hands in his pockets.
When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, stripped of the anger. Margaret and I tried to have children, for years. Every treatment, every specialist, every option. Nothing worked. He didn't look at her. Julian was born when I was 23, before I met her. His mother was a mistake. I married her because it was expected, divorced her when Julian was 2. Paid her enough to disappear and raised him alone until I met Margaret. Elara stayed silent, afraid that speaking would make him stop. Margaret loved that boy like he was hers, or she tried to give him everything, education, opportunities, values. But Julian only ever wanted what I had. The power, the respect, the fear. He didn't understand that those things cost, that they require sacrifices he wasn't willing to make. Dominic's shoulders tensed. Margaret saw it before I did. Told me Julian was broken in some fundamental way, that we needed to stop trying to fix him and start managing the damage. I didn't listen. What happened? He got engaged to a girl, Sarah. Sweet kid, worked at a nonprofit, believed in changing the world. Margaret loved her. Thought maybe Sarah would be the one to reach him. He paused, and Elara could see his reflection in the window, pain etched into every line. 2 weeks before the wedding, Julian got drunk and hit her, broke her jaw. She filed charges, then dropped them after Julian's mother paid her off and made her sign an NDA so thick you could bludgeon someone with it. Elara's stomach turned. Margaret wanted me to cut him off, disown him, make him face consequences for once in his entitled life. I didn't. I made excuses. He was young. He was drunk. It was a one-time mistake. I buried it, paid off everyone who needed paying off, and moved him into a position where he couldn't hurt anyone else because I was watching. Dominic finally turned to face her. 2 years later, Margaret was diagnosed. Stage 4. She had 6 months. Before she died, she made me promise that I wouldn't let Julian destroy anyone else the way he destroyed Sarah. The pieces clicked into place. That's why you're helping me. That's why I brought you here. His voice was rough. Because when I saw you walk out of that gala, looking like you'd finally broken, I knew. Julian had done to you what he did to Sarah, just slower. Death by 1,000 cuts instead of one punch. And I couldn't... He stopped, collecting himself. I won't break my promise to my wife. Not for my son. Not for anyone. Elara felt tears burning behind her eyes. I'm not her. I can't be her for you. I'm not asking you to be. Dominic moved back to the table, bracing his hands on the back of his chair. I'm asking you to let me keep my word to the only person who ever mattered. Is that ownership? Maybe. But it's also the only way I know how to be decent. She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to reconcile the man who blackmailed his own son with the one standing in front of her, carrying guilt like a physical weight. I need time, she said finally, to think. Take it. He didn't look at her. But Elara, if you leave, I can't protect you anymore, and Julian will know. It was a threat and a truth at the same time. She nodded and left the dining room, her legs barely holding her up. That night, she painted until her hands cramped and her eyes burned. Violent slashes of color that didn't mean anything but felt necessary. When she finally collapsed into bed around 3 a.m, her mind was too exhausted to dream. She woke to pounding on her door. Elara, open up, now! Dominic's voice, sharp with urgency. She stumbled out of bed, yanking the door open. He stood in the hallway, still in yesterday's clothes, looking like he hadn't slept. Get dressed. We need to leave. What? Why? Julian's dead. The world tilted. What? His car went off the Queensboro Bridge 3 hours ago. NYPD is calling it an accident, but I know better. Dominic's eyes were hard. Someone killed my son, and now they're coming for you. Her brain couldn't process the words. Julian, dead, coming for her. I don't understand. Get dressed, Dominic repeated. I'll explain in the car. We have maybe 30 minutes before this house isn't safe anymore. He was gone before she could respond. Elara moved on autopilot. Jeans, sweater, shoes. She grabbed her phone, her wallet, nothing else. By the time she made it downstairs, Dominic was by the front door with Mrs. Chen, speaking in low, rapid tones. Mrs. Chen saw her and nodded. Take care of yourself. Where are you going? Elara asked. Somewhere else. It's better if you don't know. She pressed something into Elara's hand, a burner phone. If you need help, call the only number programmed in there. Otherwise, throw it away in a week." Then she was gone, disappearing into the house. Dominic grabbed Elara's arm. "Car, now." They ran. Not the town car from before, but an SUV with tinted windows and an engine that sounded military. Dominic threw her into the passenger seat and peeled out before she'd even closed the door. "Seatbelt!" he barked. She fumbled with it, her hand shaking. "Dominic, what the hell is happening?" "Julian was skimming from one of my operations. Not much, but enough that it added up. I found out 2 weeks ago, right after you showed up. Told him to stop, or I'd cut him off completely." Dominic took a turn too fast, the tires screaming. "He didn't stop. He went to someone else, offered them information about my business in exchange for protection." "Who?" "The Kozlovs. Russian syndicate that's been trying to move into my territory for years. Julian gave them access codes, shipping schedules, the location of 3 warehouses." His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "I found out yesterday. Was planning to deal with it this morning, but someone got to Julian first." "The Kozlovs?" "No. They wanted him alive, at least until they got everything they needed. This was someone else, someone who wanted to send a message." Elara's mind was spinning. "What message?" Dominic didn't answer. He took another turn heading toward the highway. She asked again, louder. "What message?" "That they can get to anyone, even family." He glanced at her, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. "You were seen with me. Photographed. Julian's lawyers have documents linking you to this house. If someone wants to hurt me, you're the easiest target." "So what do? We disappear, at least until I figure out who's making moves." The SUV merged onto the highway, heading north. "I have a place upstate. Remote, secure. We'll stay there until this shakes out." "And then what?" "And then I end whoever started this." His voice was flat, final. "But first, I keep you alive." She should be terrified. Should be demanding he take her to the police, to the FBI, anywhere but deeper into this nightmare. But the police would have questions she couldn't answer, and the FBI would see her as either a witness or an accomplice. Dominic was the only thing standing between her and whatever darkness had killed Julian, so she didn't argue. Just sat in silence as the city fell away behind them and the road ahead grew darker. They drove for 2 hours, taking exits at random, doubling back, making sure they weren't followed. Finally, Dominic turned onto a gravel road that wound through dense forest. The house at the end was nothing like the mansion. A cabin, maybe, though calling it that felt dismissive. 2 stories, wood and stone, windows that probably cost more than most cars. It sat in a clearing surrounded by trees, isolated and perfect for not being found. Dominic killed the engine. "We're here." "Where's here?" "Nowhere that matters." He pulled a gun from under his seat, compact, black, deadly looking, and checked it with practiced efficiency. "Stay close. Don't touch anything until I've cleared the building." He got out. She followed, her legs unsteady from sitting so long. The air was cold and clean, pine-scented. No sounds except wind in the trees. Dominic approached the house like he expected it to explode. He unlocked the door with a key from his pocket and went in first, the gun leading. Elara waited outside, counting her heartbeats until he reappeared. "Clear, come in." The interior was sparse, furniture that looked comfortable but not decorative, a kitchen that was functional, walls that were bare. Everything designed for use, not show. There's food in the pantry, generator out back if the power goes, guns in the closet by the bedroom already loaded. Dominic moved through the space, checking windows, testing locks. Cell reception is spotty at best, landlines disconnected. "If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you." He stopped, looking at her. "If something happens to me, there's a go bag in the bedroom closet. Cash, fake ID, keys to a car buried half a mile east. You run, and you don't stop running until you're somewhere I've never heard of." "Dominic, promise me." The weight in his voice made her nod. "I promise." He studied her for another moment, then nodded and went back to his check. She stood in the middle of the main room, feeling untethered, like she'd floated so far from shore she couldn't see land anymore. Julian was dead. She should feel something, grief, relief, guilt. Instead, she felt numb. like her emotional capacity had maxed out and her brain had shut down the system to prevent overload. "You should eat something," Dominic said, emerging from the bedroom. "Then sleep. I'll keep watch." "Have you slept at all?" "I'll sleep when I know we're safe." She wanted to argue but didn't have the energy. Instead, she found canned soup in the pantry, heated it on the stove, and ate it standing at the counter. It tasted like cardboard. She ate it anyway. Dominic sat at the window with his gun on his lap, watching the tree line. She finished the soup and went to the bedroom. One bed, big enough for two. She didn't have the energy to care about the implications. She lay down fully clothed and closed her eyes. Sleep should have been impossible, but exhaustion was its own gravity, and it pulled her under fast. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window, and Dominic's voice, low and tense. "I don't care what it costs. Find out who ordered it." She sat up. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, looking like he still hadn't slept. "No. Don't touch anyone until I get back. Just gather information." He paused, listening. 2 days, maybe 3. "I'll know more soon." Another pause. "Watch the house. If anyone approaches, call me immediately." He hung up and turned to find her watching. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." "Who was that?" "Marcus. He's been making calls, trying to figure out who's behind Julian's death." Dominic set the phone down. "So far, nothing. Whoever did it, they're good at covering tracks." "Could it have been an accident?" "No." He said it with absolute certainty. Julian's car went through a barrier doing 90 miles an hour on a straight road in clear weather. Someone cut his brake line and sabotaged his steering. It was methodical. Elara's stomach turned. Why would someone do that? To send a message. To create chaos. To eliminate a loose end. Dominic moved to the kitchen, started making coffee. "Take your pick. In my world, people die for all kinds of reasons. Usually it's business. Sometimes it's personal. Either way, dead is dead." She got out of bed, moving to the window. The forest looked peaceful, unthreatening. Hard to believe there was danger out there somewhere. "You said someone's coming for me," she said. "Why? What do I have that's worth killing for?" "Information, association, revenge." He poured 2 cups of coffee, handed her one. "You were married to Julian for 5 years. You lived in his house, attended his meetings, met his contacts. Even if you didn't know what you were seeing, you saw it. That makes you valuable or dangerous, depending on perspective." "I didn't see anything. Julian kept me completely separate from his business." "You think that, but memory is strange. Something that seemed innocent at the time might be significant now." Dominic leaned against the counter. "Until I know who's making moves, I have to assume you're a target." She sipped the coffee, letting the heat ground her. "How long do we stay here?" "As long as it takes." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, typed something back. "What?" Marcus found something. A payment made from Julian's account 3 days before he died. 50,000 to an LLC that doesn't exist. He's tracing it now. "What does that mean?" "It means Julian was buying something. Protection, information, maybe a way out. Whatever it was, it didn't work." The phone buzzed again. Dominic read the message and his expression went dark. "What?" Elara asked. He looked up at her, and she saw it in his eyes, the moment everything changed. The LLC traces back to a shell company in the Caymans. That company is owned by a holding group. That holding group is controlled by someone I know. He set the phone down carefully. "Viktor Kozlov." "The Russians you mentioned?" "Yes. But here's the thing, Viktor doesn't handle small transactions. If Julian paid him directly, it wasn't for protection. It was for something bigger." "Like what?" Dominic's jaw clenched. "Like selling me out completely. Access to everything, accounts, operations, contacts. Julian didn't just betray me. He tried to destroy me." The air in the room changed, thickening with rage so dense Elara could barely breathe. "And you think the Koslovs killed him?" she asked. "No. I think someone else found out what Julian was doing and killed him before he could finish the deal. Someone who wanted to protect me." Dominic picked up his phone again, dialing. "Marcus, I need you to pull financials on everyone in my inner circle for the past 6 months. Everyone. I don't care what it takes." He hung up and looked at Elara.
Someone close to me killed my son, he said quietly, and until I know who, nobody's safe. The weight of it settled over her like a shroud. She was trapped in a cabin with a man hunting a murderer in his own organization, surrounded by people who might want her dead for reasons she didn't understand, mourning a husband she'd hated but never wished harm. And somewhere out there, Julian's killer was watching, waiting, planning their next move. Elara set down her coffee cup because her hands were shaking too badly to hold it. "What do we do?" she asked. Dominic met her eyes, and what she saw there terrified her more than anything else. "We survive," he said, "and then we burn down everyone who thought they could touch what's mine." The word mine hung in the air between them like a blade. Elara stared at Dominic, watching the fury settle into his features, not the hot, explosive kind that burned out quick, but the cold, calculated rage that turned men into something worse than monsters. His hands were steady as he set his phone on the counter. Too steady, like he'd locked every muscle into place to keep from tearing the room apart. "I'm not yours," she said quietly. His eyes snapped to her. "What? You said, 'What's mine?' I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's." For a second, she thought he might argue. Instead, something that looked almost like shame flickered across his face before he locked it down. Poor choice of words. He turned away, staring out the window at the tree line. "But the point stands. Someone killed Julian to hurt me, and they'll come for you next if they think it'll work. Unless you find them first." "Unless I find them first," he agreed. The generator kicked on outside, a low hum that vibrated through the floorboards. Elara wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, trying to absorb its warmth, but the cold she felt had nothing to do with temperature. "How do you even start?" she asked. "Looking for someone in your own organization who wants you dead? You look for motive first, then opportunity. Then you pray you're wrong." Dominic pulled his phone back out, scrolling through something. "I have 11 people in my inner circle. People I've worked with for years, some of them since before Julian was born. Any one of them could have done this." "You trust them that much?" "I used to." His jaw tightened. "Now I don't know what I trust." His phone buzzed. He read the message and his whole body went rigid. "What?" Elara moved closer, trying to see the screen. He turned it toward her. A photo, grainy, taken from a security camera somewhere. 2 men standing outside a warehouse, talking. One of them was Julian, looking nervous, hands shoved in his pockets. The other was older, thick-shouldered, with a face that looked like it had lost arguments with concrete. "That's Victor Kozlov," Dominic said, "taken 4 days before Julian died." So Julian was meeting with him directly. Not just meeting, look at what he's holding. Elara squinted. In Julian's hand was a folder, thin, maybe a dozen pages. He was in the middle of handing it to Victor. "Documents," she said. "My documents. Financial records, shipping manifests, contact lists, everything someone would need to dismantle my operation from the inside." Dominic's voice was eerily calm. "Julian wasn't just selling information. He was selling me." "But you said Victor didn't kill him." "I said I didn't think so. This changes things." He enlarged the photo, studying it. If Victor got what he wanted, why kill Julian? Unless he didn't finish the thought, didn't need to. Elara's brain filled in the blank. Unless Julian had tried to back out. Unless he'd gotten scared and threatened to expose the deal. Unless Victor had decided a dead informant was safer than a living one. "You need to call the police," Elara said. Dominic laughed, sharp and bitter. "And tell them what? That my criminal son was murdered by a rival criminal organization while trying to sell out my criminal enterprise? They'd throw a parade." "So what? You just handle it yourself?" "That's exactly what I do." He pocketed his phone. "I've been handling things myself since before you were born. This is no different. This is your son." The words landed like a slap. Dominic's expression went carefully blank, the kind of neutral that meant he was working very hard not to feel anything. "Julian stopped being my son the day he put you in danger," he said quietly. "He made his choice. I'm making mine." Before Elara could respond, his phone rang. He answered it without checking the caller ID. Talk. She couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Dominic's face change. Confusion, then disbelief,
then something that looked like horror. When? He demanded. A pause. How many? Another pause longer. Secure the building. Don't let anyone in or out. I'll be there in 3 hours. He hung up and stood there for a second, staring at nothing. Dominic? The main warehouse. Someone hit it an hour ago. Took everything. Inventory, records, cash reserves. Killed 2 of my men in the process. His voice was hollow. It's gone. All of it. Elara's stomach dropped. The Kozlovs? Had to be. This wasn't a robbery, it was a statement. He was already moving, grabbing keys, checking his gun. I need to get back to the city. You stay here, doors locked, don't answer for anyone. You can't go alone. I'm not asking permission. Dominic, if this is a trap, then I'll spring it. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked old, tired. Stay here, Elara, please. He was gone before she could argue, the door slamming behind him, the SUV's engine roaring to life. She watched from the window as he tore down the gravel drive, disappearing into the trees. Then she was alone. The silence of the cabin pressed in on her. She tried to convince herself she was safe, locked doors, remote location. No one knew she was here. But safety was relative, and relative didn't mean much when people were dying. She checked her phone. No signal, like Dominic had said. The burner Mrs. Chen had given her sat on the counter, its single program number staring at her. Emergency only, Mrs. Chen had said. This felt like an emergency. She picked it up, finger hovering over the call button, then set it back down. What would she even say? Help, I'm trapped in a cabin with a man whose son just got murdered and whose warehouse just got robbed and I don't know who to trust? She laughed, high and thin. When had her life become a bad crime novel? The hours crawled. She tried to eat but couldn't, tried to sleep but her brain wouldn't shut off. She paced the cabin, checking windows, testing locks, jumping at every sound the forest made. Around 3 in the afternoon, the burner phone rang. She stared at it, heart hammering. Only one number programmed in, only one person who could be calling. She answered. Hello? Is this Elara Vance? A woman's voice, unfamiliar, with an accent she couldn't place. Who is this? A friend? Is Mr. Vance with you? Every instinct screamed not to answer. Why? Because he's walking into an ambush and he won't answer his phone. If he goes to that warehouse, he's dead. Elara's blood turned to ice. How do you know that? Because I'm the one who set it up. The world tilted. What? My name is Irina Kozlov. Victor is my brother. And right now, I'm the only thing standing between Dominic Vance and a very unpleasant death. Elara's brain short-circuited. Why would you help him? I'm not helping him. I'm helping myself. Victor thinks he's consolidating power. What he's actually doing is starting a war neither side can win. I'm trying to stop that. Pause. Is Dominic there or not? He left hours ago. Shit. The word was sharp, frustrated. Where did he go? He said the warehouse. Someone hit it, killed his men. That was Victor, setting the trap. Dominic shows up to survey the damage, Victor's people are waiting, and suddenly the Vance Empire has no head. Irina's voice was clipped, efficient. You need to call him. Tell him not to go. He won't answer. He turned off his phone. Then you need to go there yourself. Warn him. Elara laughed, hysteria creeping in. I don't even know where the warehouse is. Yes, you do. You've been there. I've never... From the charity event, 18 months ago. The one in Red Hook, at the converted industrial space Julian said he was renovating for low-income housing. Irina's tone sharpened. That was Dominic's warehouse. Julian used it as a cover, showed it off to politicians and donors while his father moved product through the basement. You stood in the main room and gave a speech about community investment. The memory clicked into place. Exposed brick, high ceilings, Julian proud and smiling beside her while she talked about neighborhoods and opportunity. She'd felt good that night, useful. It had all been a lie. How do you know that? Elara demanded. Because I was there, in the crowd. Watching. Irina paused. I've been watching for a long time. Why? Because Victor wants to destroy Dominic, and I want to destroy Victor. Enemy of my enemy, Mrs. Vance. The sound of voices in the background, Russian and rapid. I have to go. Get to that warehouse. Save Dominic or don't. But if he dies, this city burns, and you burn with it." The line went dead. Elara stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, her mind trying to process what had just happened. Irina Kozlov, Victor's sister, calling to warn her, setting up her own brother. None of it made sense.
She set the phone down with shaking hands. She should stay here. Lock the doors like Dominic said. Let whatever was going to happen, happen. She wasn't part of this world, wasn't equipped to stop assassinations or navigate crime family politics. But Dominic had saved her, taken her in when she had nothing, protected her from Julian even when it cost him his son, and now he was driving into a trap.
She grabbed the keys to the backup car Dominic had mentioned, buried half a mile east, found the go bag in the closet, unzipped it, cash, fake ID with a name she didn't recognize, a handgun she didn't know how to use. She took the cash and the ID, left the gun. The forest was dense and the landmarks were sparse, but she found the car exactly where Dominic said it would be, buried under camouflage netting and leaves. A nondescript sedan, old enough to be invisible. The keys fit. The engine turned over. She drove. The GPS on her phone was useless without signal, but she remembered the general direction back to the city. She took back roads, stayed off highways, and prayed she wouldn't get pulled over because she had no explanation for any of this. 3 hours later, she hit the outskirts of the city. Her phone caught signal and immediately exploded with notifications, news alerts mostly. She pulled over and read them. Breaking. Explosion in Red Hook. Multiple casualties reported. Her heart stopped. She clicked the article. A warehouse, the report said. Industrial district. Fire crews on scene. No official word on cause or victims. The address was blurred in the photo, but she recognized the building, the high windows, the brick facade Julian had been so proud of. She was too late. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold the phone. She should turn around, go back to the cabin, disappear like Dominic had said. But her body moved on autopilot, keying the address into the GPS, pulling back onto the road. The closer she got to Red Hook, the thicker the smoke became. By the time she was 2 blocks away, the whole sky was gray. Police had cordoned off the area, barriers, flashing lights, officers waving traffic away. She parked on a side street and walked the rest of the way, blending into the crowd of onlookers gathering behind the barricades. The warehouse was engulfed. Flames poured from the windows, black smoke billowing into the sky. Fire trucks surrounded it, hoses spraying water that seemed to do nothing. "What happened?" she asked the man standing next to her. "Gas leak, they're saying, but I heard gunshots before the explosion." He shook his head. "Someone's having a bad day."
Someone's dead, Elara thought. Multiple someones. She scanned the crowd, looking for Dominic's face, knowing she wouldn't find it, but unable to stop herself. He was in there. Had to be. He'd walked into the trap just like Irina said he would, and now he was looking for someone. The voice came from behind her, close enough to make her jump. She spun. The man standing there was maybe 60, gray hair, expensive coat, eyes that looked like they'd seen every variation of violence and gotten bored with most of them. He smiled at her, and it was the most frightening thing she'd ever seen. "Victor Kozlov," he said, extending a hand. "You must be Elara." She didn't take his hand. Couldn't. Her whole body had locked up. "Where's Dominic?" she managed. "Inside, I imagine. Or what's left of him." Victor lowered his hand, unbothered by the rejection. "Unfortunate business. I tried to offer him a partnership. He refused. And well, here we are." "You killed him." "I removed an obstacle. There's a difference." Victor gestured to the burning building. "Don't look so tragic. Dominic knew the risks. He's been playing this game longer than you've been alive. Eventually everyone loses." Elara's vision blurred red. "You're a monster." "I'm a businessman. Monsters act without reason. I have plenty." He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying. "You, however, are a complication I didn't account for. Julian's widow, Dominic's. What? Charity case? Replacement daughter? The rumors vary. I'm nothing to you." "That's where you're wrong." Victor's smile widened. "You're leverage. Or you were, before Dominic died. Now you're just a loose end." Her hand moved toward her pocket, toward the phone, but Victor was faster.
His hand clamped around her wrist like a vice. I wouldn't, he said softly. We're in public, lots of witnesses. You scream, you make a scene, and I just walk away. Then my people find you later, somewhere quieter, and the ending is much less pleasant. He leaned in close. Or you come with me willingly. Answer some questions about what Dominic told you, what you know about his operations. After that, maybe I let you go. Maybe. I don't know anything. Everyone says that. Usually, they're lying. He started walking, pulling her with him. Come on. My car is this way. She resisted, digging her heels in. Victor sighed. Don't make this difficult. A hand landed on Victor's shoulder from behind. Let her go. Victor turned, and Elara's heart nearly stopped. Dominic stood there, covered in soot and blood, his face a mask of controlled fury. He looked half dead but entirely dangerous. Dominic, Victor said, releasing Elara and stepping back. I was told you were inside. You were told wrong. Dominic's voice was gravel. Walk away, Victor. Last chance. You're in no position to make threats. Look at you, barely standing. I'm standing enough. Dominic pulled a gun from his coat, pointing it at Victor's chest. Walk. Away. For a long moment, nobody moved. The crowd around them was oblivious, focused on the fire. Victor looked at the gun, then at Dominic, calculating odds. Finally, he smiled. Another time, then. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. Dominic waited until he was gone, then lowered the gun. His legs nearly gave out. Elara caught him, her arms wrapping around him to keep him upright. You're alive, she breathed. Barely. He leaned on her, heavy. What the hell are you doing here? Saving you, apparently. I told you to stay at the cabin. Irina called, said it was a trap. His head snapped up. Irina Kozlov called you? Yes. On the burner phone, she said Victor was setting you up. Dominic's expression went dark with something she couldn't read. And you believed her? I didn't know what to believe, but I wasn't going to let you die. He stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. Then he pulled away, standing on his own, despite the way his body swayed. We need to leave, now. You need a hospital. I need to not get arrested. Move. He grabbed her hand and pulled her through the crowd, moving with more strength than he should have had. They made it to her car, the one from the cabin, and he climbed into the passenger seat while she got behind the wheel. Drive, he said. Where? Anywhere that isn't here. She drove. Out of Red Hook, through Brooklyn, across the bridge into Manhattan. Dominic sat silent beside her, breathing shallow, one hand pressed to his ribs. You're bleeding, she said. I've been worse. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be. He pulled out his phone, cracked screen but still working, and made a call. Marcus, I need a clean room. Medical supplies, no hospitals, no questions. He listened, then rattled off an address. 20 minutes. He hung up and leaned his head back against the seat, closing his eyes. Dominic, what happened in there? Elara asked. I got there before the explosion. Saw Victor's men setting charges, confronted them. They decided bullets were easier than conversation. He pressed harder against his ribs. I got out through a side door right before the whole place went up. And your men? Were already dead when I arrived. His voice was hollow. Victor wanted me to see them. Wanted me to understand what he was taking. Why did Irina warn me? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He opened his eyes, looking at her. You shouldn't have come. You're welcome. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Thank you. The address Marcus had given them was a building in Chelsea, upscale, doorman, security cameras everywhere. Dominic had her park in the underground garage, and they took the service elevator to the 8th floor. Marcus was waiting in the hall, medical bag in hand. He took one look at Dominic and swore. How bad? 2 cracked ribs, maybe 3. Some burns, shrapnel in my shoulder. Dominic walked past him into the apartment. Nothing fatal. The apartment was sterile, furnished like a hotel. Marcus steered Dominic to the bathroom while Elara stood in the living room, her body finally catching up with the adrenaline crash. Her legs gave out and she sat hard on the couch. From the bathroom, she could hear Marcus working, Dominic's sharp intake of breath, the clink of instruments, low voices discussing damage. She stared at the wall and tried not to think about how close he'd come to dying.
tried not to think about what Victor had said. Loose end. An hour later, Marcus emerged, wiping his hands on a towel. He'll live. Barely, but he'll live. He needs rest and antibiotics, but he's refusing both. Of course he is. Elara stood. Can I see him? Be my guest. Maybe you can talk sense into him. She found Dominic in the bathroom, shirtless, bandages wrapped around his torso and shoulder. He was looking at himself in the mirror, cataloging damage. You should rest, she said from the doorway. I should kill Victor Kozlov. He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. You can't even stand up straight. Give me a few hours. She moved into the bathroom, standing beside him. Up close, she could see the full extent of it. Bruises blooming across his ribs, burns on his forearm, a cut above his eye that Marcus had stitched. He looked like he'd been through a war. Why did you come for me? He asked, not looking at her. I told you. Irina called. You could have ignored it, should have ignored it, but you drove 3 hours into a city that wants you dead to warn a man you barely know. Now he looked at her. Why? She didn't have a good answer, or maybe she did and just didn't want to say it out loud. Because you're the only person who's ever protected me without asking for something in return, she said finally. I asked you to trust me, to stay, to let me handle things my way. That's not the same as owning me, isn't it? The question hung between them. Elara thought about the past few weeks. The house, the protection, the way Dominic had dismantled her problems without asking if she wanted them dismantled. The way he'd called her mine without seeming to realize what it meant. I don't know, she admitted, but right now you're bleeding and half dead, and Victor Kozlov knows I exist. So maybe we table the philosophical debate and figure out how to survive the next 24 hours. Dominic studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough. He moved past her into the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with a wince. Marcus had left pills on the nightstand, painkillers probably. Dominic ignored them. Irina called you on the burner Mrs. Chen gave you, he said. That means she has the number, which means Mrs. Chen gave it to her. Elara's stomach sank. You think Mrs. Chen is working with them? I think Mrs. Chen has worked for me for 17 years and I never questioned her loyalty. That was a mistake. He pulled out his phone, dialed. It went to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. Where is she? Elara asked. If she's smart, know where I can find her. He set the phone down. If she's not, I'll know soon enough. What will you do to her? That depends on why she did it. His voice was carefully neutral. If Victor threatened her family, if he gave her no choice, then we'll talk. If she did it for money or power, or because she thought I was weak. He didn't finish, didn't need to. Elara sat beside him on the bed, careful not to jostle his injuries. This is insane. All of it. People dying, warehouses exploding, families turning on each other. How do you live like this? Carefully, Dominic said, and not for much longer, if Victor gets his way. So what do we do? He stopped, looking at her. There is no we, Elara. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the second Victor grabbed me on that street, which is exactly why you need to leave. I can get you out of the city. New identity, new life, somewhere Victor will never find you. You can start over. Running again. Surviving, he corrected. There's a difference. She thought about it. Really thought about it. New name, new city, new everything. Leave this nightmare behind and build something clean. It would be smart, safe. But safety wasn't what she'd chosen when she got in that car to warn him. Wasn't what she'd chosen when she stood up to Victor in front of a burning building. No, she said. Elara, no, I'm done running. From Julian, from Victor, from whatever fresh hell is coming next. You want to fight? Fine, I'll fight with you. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She met his eyes, held them. You protected me when I had nothing. You're not wrong about that. And maybe that does mean I owe you something. So here it is. I'm not leaving. Deal with it. For the first time since she'd met him, Dominic looked genuinely surprised, like she'd done something he hadn't predicted, hadn't planned for. You're going to get yourself killed, he said finally. Probably, but at least I'll go down swinging. He stared at her for another long moment. Then, incredibly, he laughed. It came out rough, pained, but real.
Margaret would have liked you, he said. Yeah? Yeah. She had the same stubborn streak, the same refusal to back down even when she should. The laughter faded, replaced by something softer. It got her in trouble more than once. But you loved her anyway. I loved her because of it. He looked away, jaw tight. And watching her die was the worst thing I've ever experienced. I won't do that again. Then don't get attached. Too late. He said it quietly, almost to himself. Before Elara could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and went very still. It's Mrs. Chen. He answered, putting it on speaker. You have 10 seconds to explain yourself, Dominic said, his voice ice. I'm sorry. Mrs. Chen's voice was shaking. I'm so sorry. They have my daughter. Victor's people, they took her 3 days ago. Said if I didn't give them information, they'd kill her. What information? Everything. Your schedules, the cabin location, Elara's phone number. They wanted to know how to find you, how to hurt you. A sob broke through. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't want to. Dominic's expression didn't change, but his hand clenched into a fist. Where's your daughter now? I don't know. They said they'd release her once this was over. Once you were... She couldn't finish. Dead, Dominic finished for her. Once I was dead. Yes. And you believed them? Silence. Mrs. Chen, did you really think Victor Kozlov would let either of you live after you helped him destroy me? I didn't know what else to do. Her voice was breaking apart. He's my daughter. I had to try. Dominic closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were cold and distant. Where are you right now? At home. They told me to wait. Pack a bag. Take only what you absolutely need. There's a bus station 3 blocks south of you. Get on the first bus heading west and don't stop until you hit California. I'll wire you money when you get there. What about May? What about my daughter? I'll find her. He said it with absolute certainty. But you need to run now before Victor decides you're a liability. Dominic, now Mrs. Chen, please. The line went dead. Elara watched him set the phone down with shaking hands. His face was expressionless, but she could see the pain in his eyes. Betrayed by someone he'd trusted for 17 years, someone who'd become family. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. She made her choice. I'd have made the same one in her position. He stood slowly, wincing. But now Victor knows about the cabin. Knows you're with me. Knows we're vulnerable. So what do we do? Dominic walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. We hit him first. Hard enough that he can't hit back. How? He turned to face her, and what she saw in his expression made her pulse spike. Irina warned you about the trap. That means she's not loyal to her brother, which means she's a weapon I can use. He pulled out his phone. I'm going to make her an offer she can't refuse. What kind of offer? The kind that ends with Victor dead and the Kozlov Empire in her hands. He started dialing. If she's smart, she'll take it. If not... He didn't finish the sentence. The phone was already ringing. Dominic Vance, Irina's voice came through, smooth and unsurprised. I was wondering when you'd call. We need to talk. I imagine we do. You're still alive, which means my warning reached you. You're welcome, by the way. Thank you. Now tell me why. Why I saved you. Simple. Victor is going to get us all killed. He's reckless, paranoid, and drunk on the fantasy of taking your empire. I'd rather work with you than die alongside him. And I'm supposed to believe you're willing to betray your own brother out of pragmatism? You're supposed to believe I'm willing to do whatever it takes to survive. Family loyalty is touching until it gets you buried. A pause. Victor has something I want, control of the Eastern Territories. You have something I want, legitimacy. Give me both and I'll give you Victor. Dominic was quiet for a moment, thinking. What's your play? Victor is hosting a meeting tomorrow night. His lieutenants, his financial backers, everyone who matters. He's consolidating power, making sure everyone knows he's the one in charge now that you're supposedly dead. Her voice turned sharp. You show up alive in front of all of them, and you challenge him directly, publicly. Put him in a position where he has to respond. That's suicide. It would be if you were alone. But you won't be. I'll make sure security is compromised. Your people get in, you confront Victor, and I make sure none of his lieutenants interfere. And after I kill him, After you kill him, I take control of the Kozlov operations. You keep your territories. We establish a truce. Maybe even a partnership if we're both feeling generous." She paused. "Or you can keep running, and Victor will hunt you both down one at a time. Your choice." Elara watched Dominic's face as he processed the offer. It was insane. Walking into a room full of people who wanted him dead, trusting a woman who'd just admitted she'd betray her own blood for power. But it was also the only move they had. "Where and when?" Dominic asked. "I'll text you the details. Come prepared." "And Dominic?" Irina's voice softened slightly. "Bring Elara. Victor wants her. Give him that much, and he'll be too focused on the prize to see the trap until it's too late." "No." Dominic's response was immediate. "She stays out of this." "Then Victor stays alive and keeps coming. This ends tomorrow night, or it doesn't end at all." The line went dead. Dominic stood there, phone in hand, staring at nothing. Elara could see the war playing out behind his eyes, every instinct telling him to refuse, to keep her away from the violence, to protect her the way he'd failed to protect Margaret. "I'll do it," Elara said before he could speak. "No, it's not your decision. Like hell it isn't. I'm not using you as bait. You're not using me. I'm volunteering." She stood, moving to face him. "Victor already knows I exist, already threatened me. If we don't end this tomorrow, he'll just keep coming, and eventually he'll win." "So you walk into a death trap to prevent a hypothetical death? That's not logic, that's martyrdom." "It's survival," she shot back. "You said it yourself, everyone loses eventually. At least this way I go down fighting instead of running." "This isn't a game, Elara. I know it's not a game." Her voice rose. "I know what this is. I know people are going to die and one of them might be me, but I'm done being the victim, done being the thing that gets protected or owned or bargained with. If I'm going to be in this world, I'm going to be in it all the way." Dominic's jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then show me." They stood inches apart, both breathing hard, the air between them crackling with tension. For a second, Elara thought he might kiss her. Instead, he turned away. "Fine," he said. "But you do exactly what I say, when I say it. No improvisation, no heroics. You're bait, nothing more." "Understood. And if something goes wrong, if Victor gets past me, you run. You don't look back, you don't hesitate. You run and you keep running until you're somewhere safe." "Okay." He looked back at her, searching her face for something. "Why are you doing this?" She thought about lying, came up with a dozen rational explanations. But in the end, the truth was simpler. "Because you're the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered," she said quietly. "And I'm not ready to lose that." Something cracked in his expression. He crossed the distance between them in 2 steps and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't sweet. It was desperate and furious and tasted like blood and smoke and fear. His hands came up to frame her face, and she grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer despite the way he winced. When they broke apart, both gasping, Dominic pressed his forehead to hers. "If you die tomorrow," he whispered, "I'll never forgive you. Then don't let me die." "I'll try." It wasn't a promise, but it was close enough. They spent the rest of the night planning. Marcus brought weapons, body armor, blueprints of the building where Victor's meeting would be held. Dominic walked Elara through every scenario, where to stand, what to say, how to move if things went wrong. She listened, memorized, tried not to think about how many of these scenarios ended with her bleeding out on a warehouse floor. Around 4 in the morning, exhaustion finally pulled her under. She woke on the couch with a blanket draped over her, morning light streaming through the windows. Dominic sat at the table, dressed in black, checking a gun with methodical precision. "What time is it?" she asked. 7. "Meeting's at 9 tonight. We have time." She sat up, body aching from sleeping wrong. "Did you sleep at all?" "No." "Dominic, I can sleep when this is over." He set the gun down. "There's coffee, food. You should eat." She did mechanically, while he continued preparing. By noon, they had a plan. By 3, they'd gone over it so many times she could recite it in her sleep. By 6, there was nothing left to do but wait. Dominic's phone buzzed at 7. A text from Irina. "All set. East entrance. Security will let you through. Good luck." "That's it then," Elara said. "That's it." Dominic stood, offering her his hand. "Ready?" She took it, standing.
Her whole body felt like it was vibrating with fear and adrenaline. No, but let's do it anyway. They drove in silence. The building was in Long Island City, an old factory converted into event space. From the outside, it looked abandoned. Inside, according to Irina, was a room full of killers.
They parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest. The east entrance was exactly where Irina said it would be, a service door with a guard posted outside. The guard looked them over, nodded once, and opened the door. Second floor, conference room at the end of the hall. Good luck. They climbed the stairs. Elara's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Dominic moved beside her, calm and focused, like he'd done this 1,000 times. Maybe he had. The conference room door was closed. They could hear voices inside, low, conversational. Dominic paused outside, looking at her. Last chance to walk away. She shook her head. He pushed open the door. The room went silent. 20 men, maybe more, all turning to look at them. And at the head of the table, Viktor Kozlov, frozen mid-sentence, his face cycling through surprise, fury, and finally cold calculation. Dominic Vance, he said slowly. I was told you were dead. You were told wrong. Dominic walked into the room like he owned it, Elara at his side. We need to talk. Viktor recovered quickly, leaning back in his chair with a smile. I have nothing to say to a dead man. Then listen. Dominic's voice was steel. You took my warehouse, killed my men, tried to kill me, but I'm still standing, and I'm here to make you an offer. An offer? How generous, Viktor's eyes slid to Elara. And you brought your pet. Touching. Elara felt Dominic tense beside her. She stayed quiet, playing the role. The offer is simple, Dominic continued. You walk away. Give me back what you took, and I let you live. The room erupted in laughter. Viktor let it go on for a few seconds, then raised his hand for silence. You're in no position to make demands, old man. Look around. You're outnumbered, outgunned, out of time. He stood. The city belongs to me now. Your empire is ash. And your precious Elara? He smiled. She's insurance, in case you decided to be stubborn. 2 men moved toward her. Dominic's hand went to his gun, but Viktor was faster, pulling his own weapon and aiming it at Dominic's chest. Don't, Viktor said pleasantly. Let them take her, or I put a bullet in you right now and she watches you die before I kill her too. Dominic's eyes met Elara's. She saw the calculation there, the terrible math of who lived and who died. She made the choice for him. It's okay, she said quietly. Let them. Elara, trust me. The men grabbed her arms, pulling her away from Dominic. She didn't resist, played scared, helpless, exactly what they expected. Viktor laughed. Smart girl, see, Dominic? Even she knows when the game is over. This isn't over, Dominic said. Yes, Viktor replied. It really is. He raised the gun, and the lights went out. The room exploded into chaos. Shouts, gunfire, the sound of bodies hitting the floor. In the darkness, Elara felt the hands on her arms release. She dropped, rolling away, exactly like Dominic had taught her. Emergency lights kicked on, bathing everything in red. Half of Viktor's men were on the floor, unconscious or worse. The other half were fighting, against what Elara couldn't tell, until she saw them. Dominic's people. Flooding in through doors that had been locked seconds ago, and at the front, directing them with cold efficiency. Irina Kozlov. Brother, she called out across the chaos, you should have listened when I told you to stop. Viktor's face twisted with rage and betrayal. You bitch! He turned his gun toward her, but Dominic was faster. A single shot, clean and precise, hit Viktor in the shoulder. He went down hard, the gun clattering away. The room went still. Viktor's remaining men looked at each other, at Irina, at Dominic. Slowly they lowered their weapons. Dominic walked across the room to where Viktor lay bleeding, staring up at him with hate-filled eyes. You were right, Dominic said quietly. The game is over. He raised his gun. Wait, Elara said. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood, brushing herself off, and walked over to where Viktor lay. You said I was insurance, she told him. You threatened me, tried to use me to hurt him. She looked at Dominic. This one's mine. Dominic studied her for a long moment, then handed her the gun. It was heavier than she expected. She pointed it at Victor, her hand shaking slightly. "Any last words?" she asked. Victor spat blood. "You don't have the stomach for it." She thought about Julian, about the years of being invisible, being used, being afraid, about every person who'd underestimated her because she was quiet and compliant and didn't fight back. She pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening. Victor jerked once, then went still. Elara lowered the gun, her ears ringing, her whole body numb. She'd just killed a man. Dominic took the gun gently from her hands. "Are you okay?" She looked at him, then at Victor's body, then at the room full of killers staring at her with something that looked like respect. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Ask me tomorrow." Irina stepped forward, surveying the damage. "Well, that's settled." She looked at Dominic. "We had a deal." "We did." Dominic holstered his gun. "The territories are yours. Do better with them than he did."
I intend to. Irina's eyes moved to Elara. "She's got spine. I like that." "She's off limits," Dominic said flatly. "Understood." Irina smiled. "Clean this up," she told her people, "and someone call the cleaners. We have a body." The room erupted into motion. People moving Victor's body, collecting weapons, wiping down surfaces. Professional, efficient, like they'd done this before. Dominic touched Elara's arm. "We should go." She nodded, letting him guide her out of the room, down the stairs, out into the cold night air. They walked to the car in silence. Once inside, door closed, safe, Elara started shaking. Not fear, not regret, just the body's response to impossible stress finally releasing. Dominic pulled her against him, careful of his injuries, and held her while she fell apart. "I killed him," she whispered into his shoulder. "I know. I didn't even hesitate. I know. Does that make me a monster?" "It makes you a survivor." He pulled back to look at her. "Victor would have killed you, killed me, killed anyone he thought stood in his way. You ended it. That's not murder, that's self-defense." "It doesn't feel like self-defense." "It will, eventually. Or it won't. But either way, you did what needed doing." His voice was gentle. "How you process that is up to you." She thought about it. About Victor's face when he realized she was actually going to pull the trigger. About the weight of the gun. About the fact that a man was dead and she was the reason. "I don't regret it," she said finally. "Good. Regret is a luxury we can't afford." He drove them back to the safe house apartment. Marcus was waiting, along with two people Elara didn't recognize, a woman with medical supplies and a man with a laptop. "Status?" Dominic asked. "Victor's death is being called an internal dispute. Irina's people are already consolidating control. And Mrs. Chen made it to the bus station. She's halfway to Denver." Marcus glanced at Elara. "How are you holding up?" "Ask me tomorrow," she repeated. The doctor checked them both over, Elara for shock, Dominic for his existing injuries, declared them both alive enough. The tech guy did something with phones and computers that Elara didn't understand but apparently made them harder to track. By midnight, they were alone again. Dominic found Elara on the balcony, staring out at the city. He joined her, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we rebuild. Figure out which parts of my operation are salvageable and which need to be scrapped. Deal with the fallout from Victor's death. Make sure Irina honors our agreement." He paused. "You don't have to be part of any of it. I can still get you out. New life, clean break." "Is that what you want?" "What I want doesn't matter." "It does to me." He looked at her then, really looked at her, with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I want you to stay," he said quietly. "But not because you owe me, or because you're afraid, or because you don't know where else to go. If you stay, it has to be because it's what you want. Because this life, this dangerous, complicated, probably doomed life, is something you choose." Elara thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago. The one who'd walked out of that gala with nothing but her phone and her dignity. The one who'd been invisible, disposable, afraid. She wasn't that woman anymore. "I choose this," she said. "I choose you." Dominic's breath caught. Then he kissed her again, soft this time, like something precious. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Then welcome to the family, he whispered.
And despite everything, the violence, the death, the impossibility of it all, Elara smiled. She'd walked away from one life and straight into another. This one was darker, more dangerous, built on foundations that would probably collapse eventually. But it was hers, and for the first time in her life, that was enough. The first 72 hours after Victor's death were deceptively quiet. Elara spent them learning how to live with what she'd done. The weight of the gun in her hand, the recoil traveling up her arm, Victor's eyes going empty. She'd replay it in fragments, waking up at 3 a.m. with her heart racing, seeing his face in every shadow, tasting copper even though she hadn't been the one bleeding. Dominic didn't push, didn't offer platitudes or tell her it would get easier. He just existed beside her, solid and present, while she figured out how to breathe around the guilt that wasn't quite guilt, but wasn't quite anything else either. On the 4th day, Marcus arrived at the safe house with a folder thick enough to be a weapon. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. Dominic was at the table eating breakfast like a normal person instead of someone who'd been shot and blown up less than a week ago. He gestured for Marcus to sit. "How bad?" "Bad." Marcus dropped the folder. Victor's death created a vacuum. Irina's trying to consolidate, but she's got pushback from the old guard. Victor loyalists who think she orchestrated a coup. They're not wrong, but they're also not backing down. That's her problem. It becomes ours when they start making noise about Dominic Vance being behind it, about how you manipulated Irina to kill her own brother, about how you're trying to absorb the Koslov territories through her. Marcus flipped open the folder. 3 warehouses hit in the past 48 hours. Not ours directly, but operations we have interests in. They're sending a message. Elara listened from the kitchen, pouring coffee she didn't want. What kind of message? That the war isn't over. Marcus pulled out photos, buildings on fire, bodies covered with sheets, police tape everywhere. They want blood for Victor, and they don't care whose. Dominic studied the photos with clinical detachment. Who's leading them? Alexei Petrov, Victor's second. He was out of the country when Victor died, came back to find his boss dead and his organization fractured. Word is he's gathering support, promising to finish what Victor started. Kill me. And anyone standing with you, which includes Irina now. Marcus tapped one of the photos. This warehouse? That was one of hers. Message received. Dominic leaned back, thinking. Elara watched the calculations happening behind his eyes. Threat assessment, resource allocation, acceptable losses, the mathematics of violence. Set up a meeting, he said finally. Neutral ground, me and Alexei. Let's see if we can talk this down before it gets worse. You think he'll negotiate? No, but I want him to refuse on record. Makes what comes next easier to justify. Marcus nodded and left. The apartment fell quiet again. Elara brought her coffee to the table, sitting across from Dominic. You're going to kill him. If he doesn't kill me first, he said it matter-of-factly. Alexei's old school, believes in blood feuds and loyalty to the grave. He won't stop until one of us is dead. Then why bother with the meeting? Because the people watching need to see me try, need to know I offered peace and he rejected it. Otherwise, I'm just another tyrant consolidating power. He looked at her. Perception matters in this world, almost as much as reality. What's the reality? The reality is Alexei will walk into that meeting planning to kill me, and I'll be ready. She sipped her coffee. It had gone cold. Where do I fit in this? You don't. You stay here, doors locked, Marcus posted outside. We've had this conversation before. And you're still alive because you listened. His voice sharpened. This isn't negotiable, Elara. Victor was containable. Alexei is a fanatic. If he gets his hands on you, he'll what? Kill me? Use me as leverage? I've heard the threats before. She set down her cup. I'm not hiding anymore. This isn't about hiding. It's about not being stupid. Then teach me not to be stupid. Give me a gun. Show me how to use it properly. Let me protect myself instead of depending on you or Marcus or whoever else you've got on payroll. Dominic's jaw clenched. You killed one man in a controlled environment with backup 30 feet away. That doesn't make you a soldier. I never said it did, but it makes me someone who can pull a trigger when it matters. She leaned forward. You told me this was my choice, that if I stayed, it was because I wanted this life. You don't get to take that back the second it gets inconvenient. They stared at each other across the table, neither backing down. Finally, Dominic stood. Fine, but you do exactly what I say, when I say it, and if I tell you to run, you run. Deal? Deal? He walked to the closet and came back with a lockbox. Inside were 3 handguns, all different sizes. He pulled out the smallest, compact, matte black, designed for concealment. Glock 43, 9mm, 6 rounds plus 1 in the chamber. He field stripped it with practiced efficiency, showing her each component. Simple, reliable, hard to fuck up. If you're going to carry, this is what you carry. For the next 2 hours, he taught her how to load, how to aim, how to breathe through the recoil. They couldn't fire it in the apartment, so he used dry fire drills, safety on, pulling the trigger on an empty chamber, building muscle memory. Don't close one eye, he corrected when she squinted. Keep both open. Peripheral vision might save your life. She adjusted, trying again. Finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Every accidental discharge happens because someone got lazy. She nodded, repositioned her grip. And most importantly, if you pull this weapon, you use it. No warnings, no hesitation. The second it's out, you're committed. Like Victor. Exactly like Victor. By the end, her hands ached and her head was swimming with information, but she could field strip the Glock and reassemble it in under a minute. Could draw from the holster Dominic gave her without snagging. Could hit center mass on the target he'd taped to the wall 7 times out of 10. Not bad, he admitted. But target practice in an apartment is different from someone shooting back. I know. Do you? He took the gun from her, reloaded it with live rounds, handed it back. Because knowing intellectually and knowing in your bones are 2 different things. When someone points a weapon at you, your body will try to freeze or run. You have maybe 2 seconds to override that instinct and act. Most people can't. Then I guess I'll find out what kind of person I am. He studied her for a long moment. You already know. You just haven't accepted it yet. The meeting with Alexei was set for the following night. Neutral ground turned out to be a restaurant in Brighton Beach. Russian-owned, cash only, the kind of place where the waitstaff didn't speak English, and the kitchen probably laundered more than dishes. Dominic brought 4 people. Elara insisted on being one of them. The other 3 were men she didn't recognize but who moved like they'd seen combat. Marcus stayed behind, coordinating from the safe house in case everything went sideways. They arrived 30 minutes early. The restaurant was closed for a private event, theirs. The owner, a woman in her 70s with eyes like chips of granite, nodded at Dominic and disappeared into the kitchen. She owes me, Dominic explained when Elara looked at him questioningly. Her grandson got into trouble with some people. I made it go away. Does everyone in this city owe you something? Not everyone, just the ones who matter. They took a table in the back, positioned so Dominic could see both entrances. His people spread out, 2 at the front, 1 at the rear exit, creating a perimeter. Elara sat beside Dominic, the Glock 43 heavy against her ribs in its holster. At 8 o'clock exactly, Alexei arrived. He was younger than Elara expected, mid-40s, athletic build, with a face that would have been handsome if not for the scar running from his temple to his jaw. He brought 6 men, all of them armed, none of them trying to hide it. The 2 groups eyed each other across the restaurant. Dominic stood. Alexei. Dominic. Alexei's English was accented but clear. You look well for a dead man. I've always been hard to kill. You want to sit, or are we doing this standing? Alexei gestured, and his men fanned out, mirroring Dominic's people's positions. Then he walked to the table and sat. Up close, Elara could see the barely controlled fury in his eyes. You have balls. I'll give you that, Alexei said. Calling me here after what you did? What I did was survive your boss trying to kill me, repeatedly. Dominic's voice was level. Victor made his play. He lost. That's not murder. That's business. Business. Alexei spat the word. You used his own sister to betray him. You manipulated her, turned her against family. That's not business. That's cowardice. Irina made her own choice. I just gave her an alternative to dying alongside Victor. She's a traitor. And when I'm done with you, she's next. Dominic's expression didn't change. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Alexei leaned forward. Victor was like a brother to me. Taught me everything, gave me purpose. and you took him from me. So yes, I'm going to kill you. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And you'll see it coming. I appreciate the warning.
I want you to know, want you to feel what Victor felt in his last moments, the fear, the betrayal. Alexei's eyes slid to Elara, and I want you to watch everyone you care about die first. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dominic's hand moved to his gun. Touch her, and you won't live long enough to regret it. Is that concern I hear? How sweet. Alexei smiled, ugly and mean. Victor told me about her, the widow who fell into your bed. Convenient timing, no? Your son dies and suddenly you have a replacement. Elara's hand went to her own gun before she could think. Alexei noticed, his smile widening. Oh, she's armed. Even better. Tell me, little widow, do you sleep with him because you want to or because you're afraid of what happens if you don't? Careful, Dominic said quietly. Dangerously. But Elara was done being careful. She stood, drawing the Glock in one smooth motion and pointed it at Alexei's face. I sleep with him because I choose to, just like I chose to put a bullet in Victor's head, just like I'll choose to put one in yours if you keep talking. The room went silent. Every gun was out now, everyone pointing at someone. One wrong move and the restaurant would become a slaughterhouse. Alexei didn't flinch, just looked at her with something that might have been respect. You've got fire. I can see why he keeps you. He stood slowly, hands visible. But fire burns out, and when it does, you'll just be another body I step over. He walked toward the exit. His men followed, backing out with weapons still raised. At the door, Alexei paused. 2 weeks, he said. That's how long you have to get your affairs in order. After that, I'm coming for everything you have. Your territory, your money, your people. His eyes found Elara. And her. Then he was gone. Elara's hands were shaking. She lowered the gun, her heart trying to beat its way out of her chest. Dominic touched her arm. You did good. I almost started a firefight. You stood your ground. That's what matters. He holstered his own weapon. But he meant every word. 2 weeks, and then this goes hot. They left the restaurant and drove back in silence. Elara stared out the window, watching the city blur past. 2 weeks. 14 days to prepare for war. It felt both too long and not long enough. Back at the safe house, Marcus was waiting with more bad news. Mrs. Chen's daughter. They found her body in a dumpster in Queens, shot twice in the head. Dominic went very still. When? Medical examiner thinks 3, maybe 4 days ago. Right around the time Mrs. Chen ran. Marcus looked sick. Victor killed her before you even got to him. Mrs. Chen betrayed you for nothing. Does she know? Not yet. You want me to tell her? Dominic was quiet for a long time. Then, no, I'll do it. He made the call from the bedroom. Elara couldn't hear the words, but she heard the tone. Gentle, regretful, the sound of a man delivering the worst news imaginable. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his eyes were red. She's gone, he said. Hung up and turned off her phone. I think she's going to do something stupid. Like what? Like come back here and try to kill Alexei herself. Grief makes people reckless. Elara thought about that. About Mrs. Chen, who'd spent 17 years loyal to Dominic, who'd betrayed him to save her daughter, who'd lost everything anyway. What was left after that kind of devastation except revenge? Can you stop her? She asked. I can try. But if she's determined... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. The next 48 hours were chaos. 3 more of Dominic's operations got hit. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to bleed resources and manpower. Irina was fighting her own battles, trying to keep the Kozlov Empire from fracturing completely. And somewhere out there, Mrs. Chen was either grieving or plotting or both. Dominic barely slept. He was on the phone constantly, shoring up alliances, calling in favors, moving assets. Elara watched him work with something like awe. This was what he did. What he'd been doing for decades, managing violence like a commodity. On the 6th day, Irina called. We need to meet, in person, now. They met at a park in Queens, neutral territory, both sides bringing minimal security. Irina looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, her usual polish replaced by something harder. Alexei's gathering an army, she said without preamble. He's reached out to every organization with a grudge against either of us, offering territory, money, whatever it takes. By my count, he's got at least 40 soldiers ready to move. Against both of us or just me? Dominic asked. Both. He sees us as one target now. Take us down together, divide the spoils. She pulled out her phone, showed them photos of men gathering at various locations. He's planning something big, coordinated, designed to cripple us both in one night. When? I don't know. Soon. Maybe days. Irina looked at Elara. You should leave the city. This is going to get ugly. She stays, Dominic said before Elara could respond. Don't be stupid. She's a liability. She's also the only person Alexei wants more than our heads. We can use that. Elara's stomach sank. Use how? Dominic turned to her, his expression unreadable. Bait. Again. But this time we control the entire trap. Absolutely not, Irina said. Alexei's not Victor. He won't be distracted by... He'll be distracted by the chance to hurt me. Dominic's voice was cold, calculated. We let word slip that Elara's somewhere vulnerable. Alexei sends people to grab her. We're waiting. Take out his soldiers, thin his numbers, maybe grab one for questioning. And if they actually get her? Elara asked. They won't. I'll have 20 people in position, but Alexei doesn't know that. He'll see an opportunity and take it. Irina studied him. You're willing to risk her like that? I'm willing to do whatever it takes to end this. He looked at Elara. But only if she agrees. Every rational part of Elara's brain screamed to say no, to refuse to be bait, to demand he find another way, to get on a plane and fly somewhere Alexei Petrov would never find her. But rationality had stopped being useful the day she walked out of that gala. What do you need me to do? She asked. The plan was simple in concept, nightmarish in execution. Marcus would leak information through carefully chosen channels. That Elara was staying at a hotel in Midtown, under a fake name, with minimal security. The leak would be credible enough to reach Alexei, but not so obvious that it screamed trap. Dominic would position his people throughout the hotel and surrounding blocks. Elara would be in the room, visible through windows at certain times, following a pattern that looked like someone trying to lay low, but not quite succeeding. When Alexei's people came, Dominic's team would close in. Clean, quiet, over in minutes. That was the plan. Elara moved into the hotel 3 days later. The room was on the 7th floor, corner suite, windows facing 2 streets. Marcus had swept it for bugs and cameras, declared it clean. Dominic's people took over the adjacent rooms, the floor above and the floor below. Remember, Dominic said, helping her unpack the minimal belongings Marcus had provided. Stay away from the windows except at the designated times. Don't answer the door for anyone. If shooting starts, get in the bathroom and stay down. I know. And keep your phone on you. Speed dial 1 is me. Speed dial 2 is Marcus. You hit either of those, we're through the door in 30 seconds. Dominic, she caught his hand. I know. You've told me 100 times. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. I can't lose you. Then don't let them take me. I won't. He left. She was alone with the gun on her hip and the fear crawling up her spine. The first day, nothing happened. She followed the routine, appearance at the window at noon, again at 4, again at 8, ordered room service under the fake name, watched TV with the volume low, waited. The second day, Marcus called. We've got chatter. Alexei knows you're there. Looks like he's planning something for tonight. Her mouth went dry. How many? At least 6, maybe more. They're being careful about communications. A pause. You can still back out. No. Figured you'd say that. Dominic wants to talk to you. The line switched. Dominic's voice came through, steady and calm. You okay? Terrified. But okay. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Listen, if they get past us somehow, if something goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, you fight. You use that gun I gave you and you fight like hell. Don't let them take you alive. You understand? She understood. Alive meant leverage, meant Dominic making concessions to save her, meant Alexei had won. I understand. I love you. He said it quietly, like the words were being pulled out of him. I should have said it before. I love you. Her throat tightened. I love you too. Then stay alive, please.
The line went dead. Elara sat on the edge of the bed, gun in her hands, and waited for the world to end. It came at 11:30. The lights in the hallway went out first. She could see the darkness creeping under her door. Then the TV died, along with the bedside lamp. The whole floor, maybe the whole building, suddenly dark. Her phone buzzed. Text from Dominic. "They're here. Stay down. I'm coming." She moved to the bathroom like he'd instructed, locking the door, getting into the tub. The porcelain walls would stop most rounds. Probably. The gun was in her hand, safety off, finger on the frame. She heard the room door explode inward, footsteps, multiple people, speaking Russian in harsh whispers. They were searching, fast and methodical. The bathroom door handle turned, locked. Someone kicked it. The door shuddered but held. Another kick. The frame cracked. Elara raised the gun, aiming at where the door would be, breathing like Dominic taught her. Slow and steady. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The door burst open. A man filled the frame, weapon raised. She fired twice. He went down. Another man pushing past the first. She fired, missed, fired again, hit him in the shoulder. He stumbled back, cursing. Return fire. The bathroom wall above her head exploded in tile fragments. She ducked lower, squeezing off 2 more rounds blind. Then Dominic's voice roaring from somewhere close. "Down!" Gunfire, screaming, the sound of bodies hitting the floor, silence. "Elara! Elara! Here!" Her voice came out hoarse. "I'm here!" Footsteps running. Dominic appeared in the bathroom doorway, covered in blood that probably wasn't his, eyes wild. "Are you hit?" She shook her head, couldn't speak. He pulled her out of the tub, checking her over with shaking hands, not quite believing she was intact. "The room's clear," Marcus called from somewhere. "But we've got more coming. Building security's been compromised." Dominic pulled Elara toward the door. The suite was carnage. 3 bodies, blood pooling on the carpet, the smell of gunpowder thick enough to taste. She tried not to look at the faces. They ran. Down the hall, past Dominic's people taking defensive positions, into the stairwell. Down 7 flights, legs burning, lungs screaming. Emerged into the lobby to find it empty except for Dominic's men holding the exits. A car screeched to a stop outside. They piled in. Marcus was driving, foot already on the gas. They were 3 blocks away when the first explosion hit. Elara twisted to look back. The hotel was burning, flames pouring from the 7th floor. More explosions followed, smaller, sequential, like dominoes falling. "They rigged it," Marcus said. "Soon as their people went in, they planned to blow the whole building. Everyone inside, us, them, civilians, didn't matter." Dominic's face was stone. How many people were in that hotel? At capacity? Maybe 200. "Get me a number. Actual casualties, and find out where Alexei is. Now." Marcus made calls while he drove. Elara sat in the back seat, still holding her gun, still shaking. She'd killed another man tonight, maybe 2. And Alexei had just tried to burn down a building full of innocent people to get to her. This wasn't war. This was extermination. They made it back to the safe house. Marcus's phone rang constantly. Updates, bad news, worse news. Final count. 37 dead, 60 injured. Most of them guests who'd been sleeping when the building went up. Dominic listened to the numbers with a face like carved granite. When Marcus finally stopped talking, Dominic walked to the window and stood there for a long time. "This ends tomorrow," he said finally. "I don't care what it costs. Alexei dies. His entire operation dies. We burn it all down and salt the earth." "How?" Elara asked. He turned to look at her. "The way we should have from the start. We stop playing defense and take the fight to him. He'll be expecting that. Good. Let him expect it." Dominic's eyes were cold, empty. 37 people are dead because of me. Because I tried to be smart, tried to minimize casualties, tried to end this clean. No more. Tomorrow, we go loud. We hit every property he owns, every person in his organization, everything he's built. And we don't stop until there's nothing left. "That's suicide," Marcus said. "He's got 40 soldiers at least. We've got maybe 20 on a good day. Then we even the odds." Dominic pulled out his phone. "I'm calling in every favor I'm owed. Every organization that owes me, every independent operator who wants a piece of Alexei's territory. By morning, we'll have 50. By tomorrow night, Alexei Petrov is history. He started making calls. Within an hour, people started arriving at the safe house, hard-looking men and women who moved like predators, who spoke in the abbreviated language of professionals. They brought weapons, intelligence, and an eagerness for violence that made Elara's skin crawl. By 3 in the morning, Dominic had his army. By 4, they had a plan. By 5, Elara understood exactly how much blood was about to be spilled. She found Dominic on the balcony staring at the pre-dawn sky. She joined him, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. "This is going to be bad," she said. "Yes, people are going to die. Maybe us. Probably us." He looked at her. Last chance to walk away. She thought about it. Really thought about it. The smart move was to run. Disappear while Dominic fought his war. Surface somewhere safe when the dust settled. Live. But living wasn't the same as being alive. "I'm not walking away," she said. "Even if it kills you?" "Even then." She moved closer, taking his hand. "You asked me once what kind of person I was. I didn't know. Now I do. I'm the kind who stays, who fights, who burns with you if that's what it takes." Dominic pulled her against him, holding her so tight it hurt. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." They stood there as the sun came up, knowing it might be the last sunrise they ever saw. At 7, Dominic gathered everyone in the living room, 53 people in total, armed to the teeth, ready to fight. "Alexei Petrov killed 37 innocent people last night," Dominic said, his voice carrying to every corner. "He did it to get to me, to send a message. Well, here's my message back. No one kills civilians in my city and lives. No one threatens my people and walks away. And no one," his eyes swept the room, "burns down a hotel full of families and gets to see tomorrow." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "We hit him everywhere at once, his warehouses, his fronts, his safe houses. We take his money, his weapons, his soldiers, and at noon exactly, we hit his headquarters. We go in hard, we go in fast, and we don't stop until he's dead." "What about police?" someone called out. "I've got that handled. We'll have a 90-minute window before they can respond with force. After that, you're on your own." "And if we don't make it out?" Dominic's expression didn't change. "Then you don't make it out. But Alexei goes down with you." It was brutal. Honest. The kind of leadership that didn't promise safety, just purpose. Everyone nodded. They spent the next 4 hours arming up, going over maps, synchronizing watches. Elara stayed close to Dominic, watching him transform from the man who'd held her at dawn into something colder, harder. A weapon pointed at Alexei Petrov's heart. At 11:30, they moved out. The city was bright and busy, oblivious to the violence about to erupt. They split into teams, some heading to the warehouses, others to the safe houses. Dominic's core group heading straight to Alexei's headquarters. A building in Brighton Beach, 3 stories, reinforced doors, guards on every entrance. They parked 2 blocks away. Dominic turned to his team. "You know the plan. Marcus takes the back, I take the front. We push in from both sides, meet in the middle. Anyone shoots at you, shoot back. Questions?" No one had questions. They moved through the streets like ghosts, weapons concealed, faces calm. Just another group of people going about their day. Until they reached the building. Then everything went to hell. Dominic kicked in the front door and the shooting started immediately. Elara stayed behind him, her gun out, her heart hammering. The entry hall was chaos. Dominic's people pouring in, Alexei's guards returning fire, bullets punching through walls and flesh indiscriminately. Someone grabbed her arm. She spun, firing without thinking. The man dropped. She kept moving, following Dominic deeper into the building. They fought room by room, floor by floor. Every door held another enemy. Every corner another threat. Elara lost track of how many times she pulled the trigger, how many bodies hit the ground. She just kept moving, kept shooting, kept surviving. They reached the 2nd floor. The 3rd. Alexei's office was at the end of the hall. Double doors, probably reinforced. Dominic didn't slow down, just walked up and kicked them open. Alexei was inside, sitting behind his desk like he'd been waiting. He had a gun pointed at the door, at Dominic's chest. "Took you long enough," Alexei said. "Traffic was hell." Dominic raised his own weapon. They stood 10 feet apart, both armed, both ready. Elara moved to Dominic's side, her gun also pointed at Alexei. 2 on 1, Alexei noted. Hardly fair. You burned down a hotel, Dominic said. Fair went out the window. Collateral damage. This is war. No. This is murder. And it ends now. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Alexei smiled. You're right. It does end now. He pulled the trigger. Dominic moved. The bullet meant for his chest hit his shoulder instead, spinning him around. Elara fired, hitting Alexei in the leg. He went down but kept shooting. Chaos. Gunfire. Dominic returning fire despite the blood pouring from his shoulder. Alexei trying to stand, collapsing. Elara emptying her magazine, her ears ringing, her vision narrowed to tunnel focus. When the smoke cleared, Alexei was on the floor, bleeding from multiple wounds. Not dead, but close. Dominic stood over him, gun pointed at his head. Any last words? Alexei laughed, wet and painful. Victor was right about you. You're weak. Too much conscience.
You're dying because of my conscience? I'm dying because you let yourself care. About her, about civilians, about doing things the right way. He coughed blood. In this world, that makes you weak. Dominic pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed in the sudden silence. Alexei stopped moving. It was over. Dominic swayed, blood loss catching up to him. Elara caught him before he fell, lowering him to the floor. You're hit, she said stupidly. Notice that? His voice was fading. Get Marcus, need to get out before... Sirens. Distant, but getting closer. Marcus burst through the door. We need to move. Now. Police are 3 minutes out. They half carried Dominic down the stairs, through the building, out into the street. The car was where they'd left it. They piled in. Marcus drove, fast and reckless, while Elara tried to stop Dominic's bleeding with her bare hands. Stay with me, she begged. Please, stay with me. I'm here. His hand found hers, squeezed weakly. We won? We won. Good. His eyes closed. Tell me when we're safe. He passed out. The next hours were a blur. Marcus took them to a doctor, not a hospital, just a guy who asked no questions and had steady hands. The bullet came out. The wound got stitched. Dominic was given antibiotics and painkillers and strict orders to not move for at least a week. He woke up 12 hours later, groggy and disoriented, in a bed Elara didn't recognize. Where's... Safe house. Different one. Marcus thought it was smart to relocate. She was sitting beside the bed, still wearing yesterday's blood-stained clothes. How do you feel? Like I got shot. Funny. But she was crying, relief overwhelming everything else. He reached up, wiping her tears with his good hand. We're alive. Yeah. Alexei's dead. Yeah. Then why are you crying? Because I thought I lost you. Because 37 people died. Because this is insane and I should hate it. But I don't, and that makes me insane too. The words tumbled out, everything she'd been holding back. Because I killed people, Dominic, multiple people, and I don't even feel guilty. I just feel relieved that it's over, that we survived. What kind of person does that make me? He pulled her down beside him, holding her while she fell apart. It makes you human. It makes you a survivor. It makes you someone I'm grateful to have beside me. Even if I'm as damaged as you are? Especially then. They lay there together, broken and bloody and alive. Outside, the city continued like nothing had happened. But inside this room, everything had changed. Elara had walked into Dominic's world as a victim. She was leaving it as something else entirely. The question was, could she live with what she'd become? She closed her eyes and held on to Dominic and decided that questions like that were for people who had the luxury of normal lives. She wasn't one of those people anymore. And somehow, impossibly, she was okay with that. Dominic spent the next 3 days in bed, drifting in and out of sleep while his body fought off infection and blood loss. Elara stayed beside him, changing bandages, monitoring his fever, barely sleeping herself. The doctor came twice a day, checking vitals, adjusting medications, assuring her he'd survive. She believed him on the second day. By the third, she was almost certain. On the fourth day, Dominic woke up clear-eyed and coherent, looking more like himself than he had since the shooting. You look terrible, he said. Elara glanced at her reflection in the window. He wasn't wrong. Dark circles, unwashed hair, clothes she'd been wearing for God knows how long. You've looked better yourself. Fair point. He tried to sit up, winced, accepted her help. How long was I out? 3.5 days, on and off. What did I miss? She pulled up a chair, wondering where to start. Alexei's organization collapsed within hours of his death. Most of his people scattered. A few tried to hold territory, but Irina's forces moved in fast. She controls everything now, the whole Kozlov Empire. Smart. He shifted, testing his shoulder. What else? The hotel fire. Official story is gas leak. No mention of gunfights or bodies. Someone buried it. I made calls before we hit Alexei. Called in favors with people who could control the narrative. His expression was grim. 37 people still died, but at least their families won't know it was murder. Is that better? I don't know. Probably not. He looked at her. Marcus? Coordinating cleanup, making sure everyone who helped us got paid and disappeared. He'll be back later today. And you? How are you holding up? Elara thought about the question. Really thought about it. She'd killed men, watched people die, held Dominic while he bled, spent 4 days terrified he wouldn't wake up. I don't know, she said honestly. Ask me in a week. He reached for her hand. She let him take it, his grip weak but present. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For dragging you into this. For making you into something you weren't supposed to be. For... He stopped, searching for words. For changing you. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. The one who'd stood in that ballroom, invisible and irrelevant, watching her husband flirt with another woman. That woman felt like a stranger now. Someone Elara had known briefly and then forgotten. You didn't change me, she said finally. You just gave me permission to become who I already was. A killer? A survivor. She squeezed his hand. There's a difference. Before he could respond, Marcus arrived with news. We've got a problem, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. Julian's mother, Catherine Vance. She's been making noise about Dominic's involvement in Julian's death, hired a private investigator, started asking uncomfortable questions. Dominic's expression went cold. How much does she know? Enough to be dangerous, not enough to prove anything. Yet. Marcus set down his briefcase, pulled out documents. The investigator's good. He's traced money movements, connected dots. Give him another month and he'll have enough to go to the FBI. So we stop him. We tried. He's not for sale, and his findings are backed up in multiple locations. We make him disappear, everything goes public automatically. Elara watched Dominic process this. Catherine Vance, Julian's mother. The woman who taught him how to manipulate, how to lie, how to destroy people quietly. The woman who'd orchestrated the smear campaign against Elara, who'd probably coached Julian on every move he'd made. Where is she now? Dominic asked. Her estate in Connecticut, heavily secured. She's not taking chances. Smart of her. Dominic stood slowly, his shoulder protesting. Set up a meeting, neutral ground, just her and me. That's a bad idea. It's the only idea that doesn't end with the FBI crawling through my entire operation. He looked at Elara. I need to handle this. I'm coming with you. No, not negotiable. Her voice was firm. Catherine hates me, blames me for Julian leaving. If you go alone, she'll never believe anything you say. But if we both go, if we present a united front, maybe she listens. Or she has us both killed. Then we die together. Elara stood, moving beside him. But I'm not letting you walk into another trap alone. Dominic looked at Marcus, who shrugged. She's got a point. Catherine might talk if she thinks there's something to gain, and having Elara there might humanize you. I don't need to be humanized. Yes, Elara said quietly. You do. The meeting was set for 3 days later, giving Dominic time to heal enough to move without bleeding through his shirt. They drove to Connecticut on a gray morning that threatened rain, the sky heavy and oppressive. Catherine's estate was exactly what Elara expected. Old money trying desperately to look older, all manicured lawns and colonial architecture and gates that cost more than most people's houses. Security checked them at the entrance, confiscated their weapons,
made them wait in the car while someone verified their identities. Finally, they were allowed through. Catherine met them in a sitting room that looked like a museum. Antique furniture, oil paintings, the smell of furniture polish, and old secrets. She sat in a high-backed chair like a throne, wearing pearls and an expression that could freeze hell. She looked at Dominic first, then let her gaze slide to Elara with undisguised contempt. "You have nerve coming here," Catherine said. "We need to talk," Dominic replied, taking a seat without being invited. Elara sat beside him, back straight, meeting Catherine's stare without flinching. "We have nothing to discuss. You killed my son." "No, I didn't." "Don't insult my intelligence," Catherine's voice was ice. "Julian dies in a convenient accident right after leaving you damaging information about your operations. Then Viktor Kozlov, the man Julian was working with, also dies, along with Alexei Petrov. And you expect me to believe you had nothing to do with any of it? I expect you to listen to the truth." Dominic leaned forward. "Julian betrayed me. That's accurate. He was selling information to Viktor, trying to destroy everything I'd built. But I didn't kill him. Someone else did. Someone who wanted to protect me before I knew I needed protecting." "Who?" "I don't know, but it wasn't me." Catherine laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're a liar, just like you've always been. You manipulated my son from the day he was born, turned him into a reflection of your criminal empire, and when he finally tried to escape, you had him murdered." "I tried to keep him away from the business," Dominic said, his voice tight. "I gave him legitimate companies, clean money, a life separate from what I do. He chose to come back, chose to get involved. And yes, when he betrayed me, I would have dealt with it, but someone beat me to it." "Convenient story." "It's the truth." "Then prove it." Catherine's eyes narrowed. "Show me evidence. Give me something besides your word." Dominic pulled out a folder Marcus had prepared. Inside were financial records, phone logs, security footage, everything that documented Julian's betrayal and the timeline of his death. "This shows Julian meeting with Viktor. This shows money moving from your son's accounts to Kozlov's shell companies. This shows him at my warehouse 3 days before it was hit, photographing documents." Dominic spread the papers across the coffee table. "Your son was a traitor, but he was still my son, and I didn't kill him." Catherine looked at the documents without touching them. Her face revealed nothing, but Elara could see the war happening behind her eyes. Grief fighting with pride, love battling with the need to blame someone. "Even if I believed you," Catherine said finally, "it doesn't change what you are, what you turned him into." "No, it doesn't." Dominic's voice softened. "Julian was broken. I saw it too late. Margaret saw it years ago, and I didn't listen. I thought I could fix him, or at least manage him. I was wrong, and that's on me." "So you admit it?" "I admit I failed him. I admit I should have cut him off, forced him to face consequences, made him into his own man instead of trying to make him into mine." Dominic's jaw tightened. "But I didn't kill him. And if you send your investigator to the FBI, all you'll do is destroy his memory. Everything Julian built, the legitimate businesses, the reputation, the life he had, it'll all be exposed as a front for my operations. Is that what you want? Your son remembered as a criminal?" Catherine was quiet for a long time. Then her eyes moved to Elara. "And you? What's your role in this?" Elara met her gaze steadily. "I was married to Julian for 5 years. He was cruel, unfaithful, and controlling. When I finally left him, Dominic took me in, protected me. And yes, I've done things I'm not proud of to survive. But I didn't kill Julian either." "You expect me to believe you cared about him?" "No. I expect you to believe I'm telling the truth." Elara's voice was calm, measured. "Julian was your son. I understand your need to blame someone. But Dominic didn't kill him, and neither did I. Someone else did. Someone we're still looking for." "Why should I believe either of you?" "Because we came here," Dominic said. "If I'd killed Julian, the last thing I'd do is sit in your house and give you evidence of his crimes. I'd let your investigator dig, find nothing concrete, and eventually give up. But I'm here because I want you to know the truth, and because I'm asking you to let this go." "Let it go?" Catherine's voice rose. "My son is dead. I know. And I'm sorry. Sorrier than you'll ever understand." Dominic stood slowly. "But bringing me down won't bring him back. It'll just destroy whatever good Julian managed to build in his life. Is that really what you want? Catherine stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood, walking to the window, her back to them. Get out, she said quietly. Catherine, get out! She didn't turn around. I need to think. I'll call off the investigator for now. But if I find out you lied to me, if I discover you had any part in Julian's death, I will destroy you. Do you understand? Yes. Then leave, before I change my mind. They left, got in this car, drove back toward the city in silence. Elara watched the landscape change, suburbs to urban sprawl to the familiar chaos of Manhattan. Dominic drove with one hand, the other pressed unconsciously against his healing shoulder. Do you think she'll keep her word? Elara asked finally. I don't know. Catherine's unpredictable. She might let it go. She might spend the rest of her life trying to bury me. He glanced at her. Either way, we did what we could. It wasn't enough. It never is. They made it back to the safe house around sunset. Marcus was waiting with Chinese food and a bottle of expensive scotch. How'd it go? He asked. She didn't kill us, so better than expected. Dominic accepted the scotch, poured 3 glasses. Any other disasters while we were gone? Irina called. She's consolidating power. Wants to meet next week to discuss territory divisions. Of course she does. Dominic drank, grimaced. What else? Mrs. Chen surfaced. She's in California. Sent a message through back channels. She says she's sorry, and she understands if you can't forgive her. Dominic was quiet for a long time. Tell her I understand why she did it, and that I'm sorry about her daughter. You want me to send money? No, she wouldn't take it. Just send the message. Marcus nodded and left them alone. Elara and Dominic sat in silence, eating food that tasted like cardboard, drinking scotch that burned all the way down. What happens now? Elara asked. Now? Dominic set down his glass. Now we figure out how to live with what we've done. And how do we do that? Carefully, one day at a time, trying not to think too hard about the body count. She thought about Victor, about the men in the hotel, about Alexei bleeding out on his office floor, about all the violence she'd witnessed and participated in. I should feel worse than I do, she said. Probably. But guilt is relative. We did what we had to do to survive. Whether that makes us heroes or monsters depends on who's telling the story. Which are we? He looked at her, his gray eyes tired and ancient. Both. Neither. Does it matter? I think it should. Then you're still more human than I am. He stood, wincing. I'm going to sleep. You should too. But sleep didn't come easily. Elara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind cycling through everything that had happened. 6 months ago, she'd been Mrs. Julian Vance, living in a gilded cage, invisible and irrelevant. Now she was, what? A killer? A survivor? Dominic's partner in whatever this was? She didn't have answers. Wasn't sure she wanted them. Around 3 a.m, she gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. Found Dominic already there, drinking coffee and reading something on his tablet. Can't sleep either? She asked. Haven't really tried. He poured her a cup. What are you thinking about? Everything. Nothing. What comes next? Smart question. He set down the tablet. I've been thinking about that too. This life, the violence, the constant threat, the weight of it all. It's not sustainable. Eventually something gives. Someone gets lucky, or you get slow, and it ends badly. So what do? You get out. Before that happens. He looked at her. I'm 63 years old. I've been doing this for 40 years. I'm tired, Elara. Tired of the violence, tired of watching people die, tired of becoming something Margaret wouldn't recognize. So quit. It's not that simple. You don't just walk away from this world. It follows you, finds you, finishes what it started. Then what? Then you make it so they can't find you. You transfer everything to someone else, burn the bridges, and disappear so completely that you might as well be dead. He paused. I've been building that exit for years. Moving money into untraceable accounts, creating identities, establishing lives in places no one would think to look. It's ready, has been for a while. I just never had a reason to use it. And now? Now I do. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Come with me. The offer hung in the air between them. Elara's brain stuttered, trying to process what he was asking. What? Leave this behind. All of it. We take new names, move somewhere quiet, and build something that doesn't involve blood and death and constant fear. His grip tightened. I know it's a lot to ask. I know you didn't sign up for any of this, but I'm asking anyway. Come with me. She should say no. Should tell him she needed time, needed space, needed to figure out who she was without the constant threat of violence. But looking at him, at this man who'd saved her, protected her, changed her in ways she was still understanding, she realized she already knew her answer. Where would we go? Somewhere warm, somewhere they speak a different language and don't ask questions. I'm thinking South America, maybe Portugal. Somewhere we can disappear. And do what? Whatever we want. Read books, learn to cook, sit on a beach and watch sunsets, boring things, normal things. He smiled, and it looked almost hopeful. Things I haven't done since before you were born. What about your empire, everything you've built? Irina can have it, Marcus too. I'll transfer control, set them up to succeed, and walk away. He paused. The empire was never the point. It was survival, providing for family, making sure I had enough power that no one could touch the people I cared about. But now the people I cared about are mostly dead, and the one person I still care about is sitting across from me asking if she should come to Portugal. I didn't say Portugal. But you're considering it. She was. Against all logic, all reason, all sense of self-preservation. She was considering running away with a man twice her age who'd built an empire on violence and secrets. A man who'd blackmailed his own son, killed his enemies without hesitation, and turned her into someone who could pull a trigger without flinching. A man who'd also given her a home when she had nothing. Who'd protected her when everyone else wanted to use her. Who'd seen her at her worst and her most vulnerable and chosen to stay anyway. Yes, she said, I'm considering it. What would it take to make you say yes? She thought about it, really thought about what she needed to walk away from this life and into whatever came next. Honesty, she said finally. Complete honesty. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. If we do this, if we disappear together, I need to know everything. Who you really are, what you've really done, all the darkness you've been hiding, because I can't build something real on a foundation of lies. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, ask me anything. Did you kill Julian? No. Do you know who did? I have suspicions, but no proof. Who do you suspect? He hesitated. Mrs. Chen. She was the only person who knew exactly where Julian would be that night, who had access to his car, who understood how to make it look like an accident. I think she did it to protect me, to eliminate the threat before I had to make a choice between my son and my survival. Elara's stomach turned. And you let her run. Told her to disappear. Because she's already lost everything. Her daughter, her job, her life here. Making her answer for Julian's death wouldn't bring him back. It would just add another body to the count. That's not justice. No, but justice is overrated when you're trying to survive. He met her eyes. Does that change your answer? She wanted to say yes, wanted to be outraged that he'd let Julian's killer walk free. But she thought about Mrs. Chen, 17 years of loyalty, one desperate choice to save her daughter, losing everything anyway. What would punishing her accomplish except more pain? No, Elara said quietly. It doesn't change my answer. What else do you want to know? Everything. Start at the beginning. So he did. For the next 3 hours, as the sun came up and the city woke around them, Dominic told her everything. His childhood in poverty. His first kill at 19 defending a friend in a bar fight gone wrong. His climb through the ranks of organizations that no longer existed. Meeting Margaret. Building the empire. Failing Julian. All the deaths. All the compromises. All the moments where he'd chosen power over principle. He told her about the people he'd killed personally, 14, not counting wars he'd fought in his 20s. He told her about the operations that had gone wrong, the innocents who'd died as collateral damage, the sleep he'd lost, and the nightmares he still had. He told her who he really was, stripped of pretense and protection. And it was ugly, brutal, the kind of truth that should have sent her running, But it was also human, complicated. The story of someone who'd been trying to survive in a world that rewarded violence and punished weakness. When he finished, the sun was fully up. Elara sat with it all, processing, trying to reconcile the man who'd just confessed to decades of crime with the man who'd held her while she cried. "Thank you," she said finally, "for telling me. Does it change anything?"
Yes and no. I know who you are now, really know, and I'm choosing to stay anyway. She reached across the table. So yes, I'll come with you, to Portugal or wherever else. We'll disappear together. Something in Dominic's expression cracked. Relief, maybe, or disbelief that she'd said yes. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything.
He stood, came around the table, and kissed her. It was different from the other times, less desperate, more certain. The kiss of two people choosing each other with full knowledge of what that meant. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. We'll need a few months to set everything up. Transfer control, liquidate assets, create the paper trail for our new identities. His voice was rough. Can you wait that long? I've waited my whole life for something real. A few more months won't kill me. The next 3 months were a controlled chaos of preparation. Dominic transferred portions of his empire to Irina, who took control with efficient brutality. Marcus received the rest, along with instructions on how to maintain operations without Dominic's direct involvement. Money moved through dozens of accounts, ending up in places it couldn't be traced. New identities were created: birth certificates, passports, bank accounts, an entire history for people who'd never existed. Dominic bought a house in a small coastal town in Portugal. Nothing ostentatious, just a whitewashed building with blue shutters and a view of the ocean. Sent photos to Elara on days when the planning felt overwhelming. She spent the time learning Portuguese, studying the culture, preparing for a life that would be nothing like what she'd known. Some days it felt impossible. Others, it felt like the only sane choice she'd ever made. They told no one except Marcus and Irina, held no going-away party, just quietly dismantled the life they'd built and prepared to step into something new. The night before they left, Dominic took Elara to the cemetery where Margaret was buried. They stood in front of the headstone, simple granite, her name and dates, nothing else. I need to say goodbye, Dominic said, properly. I never did before. Elara stood back, giving him space, watched as he knelt beside the grave, one hand resting on the cool stone. I kept my promise, he said quietly. I protected Elara. Kept Julian from destroying her the way he destroyed Sarah. It cost me everything, but I'd do it again. He paused. I hope you'd understand. Hope you'd approve of what comes next. He stayed there for a few more minutes, silent, communing with ghosts. Then he stood, brushed off his knees, and walked back to where Elara waited. Ready? She asked. As I'll ever be. They flew out the next morning on a commercial flight under their new names. Robert and Elena Carvalho, retired couple, looking for a quiet life by the sea. No one looked twice at them. The house was exactly as it had appeared in photos, small, clean, perfect. They spent the first week just settling in, learning the rhythms of the town, becoming invisible. Elara learned to shop at the local market, practicing her Portuguese on vendors who smiled at her accent. Dominic learned to cook, fumbling through recipes in a language he didn't fully understand. They took walks on the beach at sunset, started reading books they'd never had time for, planted a garden that would probably die, but they tried anyway. It was boring, peaceful, exactly what they'd needed. 2 months in, Marcus called. Just once, to confirm they'd settled safely. He didn't ask where they were, and Dominic didn't tell him. How's Irina handling things? Dominic asked. Better than expected. She's consolidating territory, making alliances, keeping the peace. You trained her well. I didn't train her at all. She figured it out herself. Even better. A pause. Are you happy? Dominic looked at Elara, who was reading on the porch, sunlight in her hair. Yeah, I think I am. You? Busy, rich, alive, that's enough. Marcus's voice softened. Take care of yourself, old man. You too. They never spoke again. 3 months became 6. 6 became a year. The seasons changed and they changed with them. Softer, slower, less haunted by what they'd left behind. Elara started painting again. Real paintings this time. Better than Margaret's, but still objectively terrible. Dominic didn't care.
He hung them in the house like they were masterpieces. He taught her to fish from the rocks near their house. She taught him to dance, badly, in their tiny kitchen while dinner burned on the stove. They fought sometimes, about money, about the past, about whether they should have come here at all. But the fights ended with apologies and compromises, and the understanding that they'd both made this choice deliberately. One evening, almost 2 years after they'd arrived, they sat on the beach watching the sunset. The sky was on fire, oranges and reds and purples that looked impossible. "Do you regret it?" Elara asked. "Leaving everything behind?" Dominic thought about it. "Sometimes. When I think about all the years I spent building something I just handed over. When I wonder if Marcus is running things the way I would have. When I remember people I left behind without saying goodbye. But then I look at this." He gestured at the sunset, the ocean, the quiet. "And I remember why I left. The Empire was killing me. Slowly, but definitely. Every decision, every death, every compromise was taking a piece until there wouldn't be anything left worth saving." He looked at her. "You saved what was left." "I didn't save you. You saved yourself." "We saved each other." He took her hand. "I gave you a way out of Julian's world. You gave me a reason to leave mine, fair trade." She leaned against him, watching the sun sink into the ocean. "What do you think happens to us now?" "Now? We keep doing this, living quietly, being boring. Maybe I learn to cook something that doesn't taste like cardboard. Maybe you paint something that's actually good." "Big dreams." "The biggest." He kissed the top of her head. "I spent 40 years dreaming of power and control. Turns out what I really wanted was this, someone to watch sunsets with." "You're getting sentimental in your old age." "I'm allowed. I'm retired." They sat there until the stars came out, neither of them speaking, just existing in the quiet. Behind them, the house waited, small and whitewashed, and nothing like the mansion in New York. Inside were books they'd read and dishes they'd cooked and lives they'd built from nothing. It wasn't perfect. Some nights Elara still woke up from nightmares about Victor's eyes going empty. Some nights Dominic still dreamed about Julian, about what he could have done differently, about all the ways he'd failed. But they had each other. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. 5 years later, Elara stood in a gallery in Lisbon, watching people study her paintings. They were better now, still not masterpieces, but competent enough that a small gallery had agreed to show them. Dominic stood beside her, gray hair now fully white, lines deeper around his eyes, but healthier than she'd ever seen him. "Which one's your favorite?" she asked. He pointed to a painting near the back, a coastal scene, their house visible in the distance, the ocean stretching to infinity. "That one, because I was there when you painted it. Watched you work for 3 days straight, barely eating, completely absorbed. That's when I knew you'd finally let it all go." "Let what go?" "The woman you used to be, the life you left behind. All the violence and fear and survival instinct. You were just creating, being present. It was beautiful." She studied the painting with new eyes. He was right. She remembered painting it, remembered the feeling of calm that had settled over her, the sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "I have something to tell you," she said. His expression changed, suddenly wary. "What?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Dominic's face cycled through shock, disbelief, terror, and finally something that looked like joy. "Are you sure?" "Confirmed yesterday, about 8 weeks along. I'm 68 years old. I'm aware. I'm going to be changing diapers in my 70s. Probably." He pulled her close, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. "How do you feel about it?" "Terrified, excited, completely unprepared." She leaned back to look at him. "How do you feel?" "The same, plus ancient." He laughed, the sound rough and genuine. "A baby. We're going to have a baby." "Are you okay with that?" "I'm more than okay. He searched for words. "I failed Julian. In every way that mattered, I failed him. But maybe this time, with you, in this life, I can do better." "We can do better," she corrected. "We can do better," he agreed. They left the gallery hand in hand, stepping out into Lisbon's evening light. The city hummed around them, tourists and locals, street musicians and vendors. the smell of grilled fish and wine and possibility. Somewhere in New York, Irina was running an empire. Marcus was managing operations. Catherine Vance was probably still looking for answers about her son's death that she'd never find. But here, in this city, in this life, Elara and Dominic were just two people trying to figure out how to be normal.
They caught a train back to their town, arrived home as the sun was setting. Their daughter, they somehow both knew it would be a daughter, would be born in 7 months, would grow up speaking Portuguese, knowing nothing of the violence her parents had lived through, swimming in the ocean and painting terrible pictures and living a life so normal it would be revolutionary. That night, Elara and Dominic sat on their porch, watching the stars come out. The ocean whispered against the shore. The wind carried the smell of salt and jasmine.
"I used to think I was broken," Elara said quietly. "That Julian had broken something fundamental in me and I'd never be whole again. And now?
Now I think maybe I was never broken, just trapped, and you gave me a way out. We gave each other a way out."
Dominic's hand found hers in the dark. "Everything I did, the violence, the empire, all of it, I thought it was about survival, about protecting what was mine. Turns out it was really about trying to control an uncontrollable world, trying to make sure nothing could hurt me again after Margaret died." "Did it work?"
"No, I just hurt myself in different ways." He squeezed her hand. "But then you showed up, and for the first time in decades, I had something to protect that wasn't about power or territory. You were just you, and that was enough. I killed people for you, and I'd kill for you, have killed for you. Does that make us monsters?" Elara thought about it, about Victor and Alexei and all the bodies they'd left behind, about the hotel fire and the 37 people who'd died, about Julian bleeding out in his car because Mrs. Chen had decided Dominic's life was worth more than his. "I think it makes us human," she said finally, "flawed and damaged and trying our best with the cards we were dealt. We made choices, some of them were terrible, but we're still here, still trying. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything." Dominic pulled her closer. "We survived, and now we get to live. Really live. Not just exist in the spaces between violence. That's more than most people in our old world ever get." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the ocean, feeling the night settle around them. "What do you think she'll be like?" Elara asked eventually. "Our daughter? Strong, like her mother. Stubborn too, probably." He smiled. "Smart enough to never make the mistakes we made. Safe enough that she'll never understand why we're so protective. Normal in all the ways we never got to be." "That sounds perfect." "It does, doesn't it?" Elara closed her eyes, imagining it. A little girl with Dominic's gray eyes and her dark hair running on this beach, laughing at things that were actually funny, living a life unmarked by violence or fear or the weight of impossible choices. It was the best revenge she could imagine, raising someone so far removed from their past that she'd never even understand what they'd escaped. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." Dominic's voice was soft in the darkness. "More than I thought I was still capable of. More than I probably deserve." "You deserve it. We both do. After everything we've been through, we deserve this." "Do we?" There was doubt in his voice, real doubt. "Sometimes I wonder if this is just borrowed time, if one day the past catches up and destroys everything we've built. Then we fight, like we always have." Elara opened her eyes, looking at him. "But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're free, really, finally free, and we get to spend the rest of our lives figuring out what that means." Dominic was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded, something settling in his expression. "Okay, I can live with that." They went inside as the night deepened, made dinner together, argued about whether the fish was overcooked, laughed at nothing in particular. Went to bed early, exhausted by the simple act of being happy. And somewhere in the darkness, in the space between sleeping and waking, Elara realized something fundamental had shifted. For 5 years, she'd been waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone from their old life to find them, for the violence to catch up. But it wasn't coming. The past was past. And what lay ahead was uncertain and terrifying and completely theirs to shape. She'd walked out of that Manhattan gala with nothing but her phone and her dignity. She'd lost both in the months that followed. Lost herself, too, in the violence and blood and impossible choices. But she'd found something better, something real. A partner who'd seen her at her worst and stayed, a life built on truth instead of lies. And now, impossibly, a future that looked nothing like the past. The last thing she thought before sleep claimed her was that she'd made the right choice. Not the easy one, not the safe one, but the right one. Everything else, the bodies, the guilt, the weight of what they'd done, would fade with time. But this was forever. And somehow, against all odds, Elara Vance, or Elena Carvalho, or whoever she was now, was finally, completely home.